Welcome to the Behind Them Sticks podcast, brought to you by TSWS Gaming.
Come and talk to me, Lennard Ray. That's your name. Come and talk to me. I just wanna have a conversation. No, I'm not your type of baby. Listen, I'm just saying we can rule the world, just me and you. If you quit playing, won't you take a chance with me and have that conversation? I just wanna have that conversation with you. Come and talk to me. I just wanna have that conversation with you. Look, see we vibing and you know it's true. Baby, what it do? Do for me and I'ma do for you. No doubt about it, Boosie. I'm a Midwest king, looking for myself a queen. Ready to chase a dream with a dope self-esteem. You find it in all I know, and that's for real. You get to shaking that ass on the floor, and I see what's real. No disrespect, I just tell it like it is. Do you ever want some kids? What your ultimate goals? Maybe I can help with those. The mo was broke when he made you a blessing. You looking like a whole buffet, and I need some seconds. You say you have promiscuous ways, that was back in the day. I'll be alive, I say I did it. That shit was a phase. So baby, take this journey with me. You can pick the time and place, this nigga isn't picky. Smile on your face, I know the deal. Sign and deliver after seal. I can see it in her eyes, this one right here for real. I just wanna have a conversation. No, I'm not your type of baby, listen, I'm just saying. We can rule the world, just me and you if you quit playing. Won't you take a chance with me and have that conversation? I just wanna have that conversation with you. Come and talk, yeah. I just wanna have that conversation with you. Lady, you so far ahead of these others, just like a ship on the horizon. Picking up on your vibe, signal stronger than Verizon. All the thoughts that I've been contemplating, ain't no time for faking or debating. You the one, ain't no mistaking. Look, I see you swag different. Always carry yourself like you ready, you know the mission. I had to know you, I'm tempted. I can see why you timid. Hold up now, baby, listen. Just take that dance with me, I can show you that there's a difference. I'm locked in. I throw away my playaways because you pop in. A shooter always shoot a shot. With you by my side, I guarantee we'll reach the top. I put that on God and then I give you all that I got. So baby, take this journey with me. You can pick the time and place, this nigga isn't picky. Smile on your face, I know the deal. Sign and deliver after seal. I can see it in her eyes, this one right here for real. I just wanna have a conversation. No, I'm not your type of baby, listen, I'm just saying. We can rule the world, just me and you if you quit playing. Won't you take a chance with me and have that conversation? I just wanna have that conversation with you. Come and talk, yeah. I just wanna have that conversation with you. Come and talk to me.
Welcome to the Behind Them Sticks podcast, brought to you by TSWS Gaming.
Come and talk to me, Leonard.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another fantastic episode of Behind Them Sticks with your boy Ham Solo 05 Gaming. And you are on the TSWS Gaming channel on YouTube. So thank you guys for stopping in to check out the show. Thank you to our excellent guests that decided to come through. Shoot, I asked you, what was it, just a couple weeks ago, and you said yeah, and I was like, hell yeah, because I actually had somebody that was supposed to be slotted in this spot, and I was planning on putting you in like November or something like that, but somebody else like canceled last second because they didn't want it to be on camera or something. So I was just like, yo, you want to be on the show? And you're like, yeah, I don't see any problem. As long as I ain't got nothing going on, and you know, I kept up with you, let you know, hey, we're about a week out on the show, and you said everything still looks good. So now we're here doing it live. What's up, One Bad Mutha? How you doing?
I'm good, man. How you doing? It's always good to be the backup. I'm just kidding.
Oh no, no. Like I said, I had planned to put you up in November. But I mean, if I can push you up, I'd rather because I feel sometimes when I book people like a month and a half in advance, I get nervous. because that gives them a lot of
yeah.
time to make adjustments or find something else or something like that. So when I find somebody I want to talk to and I'm like, oh, I can slide you in 2 weeks, that
Yeah,
seems
that
a lot
sounds
more
good, man.
comfortable. To me, it's a lot more like I feel like it's gonna happen compared to like I've had Jez booked before, and he was booked out like a month and a half out, and I was just like, man, that's a whole lot of room. And then of course he got back to me not that long ago, and he's like, can I move to November? And I was like, that's why. See, I want to be booked out so I know I have something coming, but at the same time, if I book out too far, then it's like, I'm giving somebody a lot of wiggle room or whatnot. But anyways, welcome to the show, brother. Thank you so much for deciding to come on. Going ahead.
For thinking of me, man.
Absolutely. I mean, you have a good reputation from what I notice within the community. So,
Really know me.
I mean, that's just what I see or whatnot. But go on ahead and shout yourself out. Let everybody know where they can find you and whatnot before we go on ahead and get started.
Yeah. So if people want to find me, you can. The easiest way is on Twitter at @mutha_1 MUTHA_ONE. I am senior editor over at Xbox Era. Oh, and my cat is messing with my settings here. Give me a second here. All right, there we go.
That's fantastic.
My cat is like we're walking across all my equipment, and it somehow just knocked some volume off here. But so basically, yeah, people want to find me on Twitter. Also, I'm at Xbox Era. I'm a senior editor over there. We also have a spin-off podcast called You Had Me at Halos for all the Halo fans, and something we've been doing for about a year and a half. So anybody who's listening here that is a big Halo fan, we got people that cover it from all different angles, from the lore all the way down to competitive stuff. So check us out there. But yeah, man, other than that, you can find me playing like Where's Waldo on all types of podcasts. But again, you can find I'll let you know on Twitter where I'm going to be at.
Okay. Now going ahead, and if you would let some people know like who's all in your crew over at Xbox Era.
Whoop, could you repeat that? I'm sorry, my cat really messed up my settings here.
No, I was saying who's all up in your crew over at Xbox Era.
Yeah, so like when we run our so the main show is hosted by Nick and John. I think a lot of people
Special
already know
Nick.
who they are. Yeah, Special Nick. Mr. Insider for PlayStation.
Yeah.
And John, Mr. Forge. He's on the Forge console over. He was one of the 12 OGs there with the Halo Forge stuff. So he got some good information on that, and we're going to be doing some cool things there. But they host the main podcast. Sometimes I rotate through there along with other staff members on Xbox Era. It's just something that we've been doing though for fun. But on our Halo podcast, we have a separate group, and basically what ended up happening was about a year and a half ago, somebody decided like just talked about the idea of doing something leading up to the launch of Halo Infinite. This was back when we thought it was going to launch in 2020.
Right.
I always wanted to lock down the title You Had Me at Halo. I'm like, hey, there's our chance to do that. So literally a podcast started so I could lock down that name. and so we did it. And so right now the crew is Jesse's on there, Daniel, Soul, and then also my friend Austin Ford. So it's a group of us, and so we kind of 4 or 5 of us are usually on a given show, and really just kind of cover everything like I said, from lore heavy. We got some guys on there that are really into the books, really know what's going on with all the details of the lore, all the way down to somebody like myself who just plays a lot of multiplayer and is kind of really engaged there. And then we brought John on recently and probably have him on a little bit more, kind of talking about some of the Forge stuff. So really just kind of covering that from all angles. But yeah, it's a lot of different names. I think in terms of any of the bigger ones, I just sometimes John or Nick popped on, but it's really our own crew that started there, and that's probably you could say was like baby's first podcast for myself. And I somebody was actually telling me, it's like, hey, I went back and started listening to your early episodes. Like, oh my God, we didn't get rid of those.
Yeah, those early episodes would be rough. I go back and look at my early episodes sometimes. I'm just like, my mic, my quality, just everything is just a mess. And I'm not saying I got it completely together quite yet, but it's just like, them early episodes are very cringe.
They absolutely are, man. It is really funny to kind of go back and just see how far you come in just really a year and a half isn't a long time, right? Or a year, and seeing it sounded like we were talking through tin cans at the time. Nobody was on camera, and I still kind of it's kind of almost a shtick now. We never launched smoothly, and I brought that here. Like, of course, this thing here, this animal here, screws up my intro every time because it thinks I'm talking to it when I first start talking on one of these, and it comes over and it starts walking across my keyboards and distracting me. And so yeah, I tend to have like flustered, little discombobulated starts a lot. It's just become a
cats
shtick
are for.
So that's what they're for, man. Yeah, it's just become part of the show. But yeah, it's we definitely have come a long way. But that was our first, and since then, obviously some of the guys have done a lot more. Jesse does a review every other day, it feels like, for Xbox Era, and I've had some pieces in there. Been working on a side project behind the scenes, but hopefully we'll come back to doing some video and written content more often again here soon.
Okay, well, we'll get a little bit deeper into that content creation stuff here in a little bit. But as of right now, I want to ask, like, what have you been playing as of lately? Anything stick out? There's been a lot of game launches as of lately. There's going to be a lot of game launches coming soon. Especially like November is going to be pretty wild. If you have a PlayStation, we either you have a PlayStation or not, really. There's a lot of stuff to freaking play right now. Just within the last 7 days, we got 2 games drop into Game Pass that were massive games, or supposedly massive. I'm not sure. Were they your taste?
Yeah, actually, that is the game. Plague Tale is the game I started playing last night, and it was one of my sleeper hits of last generation. So, been looking forward to that. And I'm generally not. I would say like story-driven games aren't like the number one thing on my list, but this was one of the few that really captivated me just from the setting and the atmosphere and just the art and all the environments. They did a really good job, I thought, with the characters and environments. So been pretty excited about that launching, and that's the main thing that I'm on right now.
May I ask how you're playing it?
I'm playing it on the Series X right now.
Okay, nice.
So, yeah, but I got the VR to make up for the frames a little bit.
Oh, okay. So you got a nice little TV and whatnot that you're playing it on.
That's my the 77-inch OLED. That was the
goodness.
CX. That was, yeah. It's a beast. But that was my
a pretty penny too.
Yeah, that was my I'm single gift to myself.
There you go.
I figured to get that right now. Like nobody could yell at me about it. But yeah, that's where that's being played, and I do plan on getting a gaming PC later this year, but I'm still mostly always been a console gamer, even when I've had gaming capable PCs. It's just I like the convenience, and I work on a computer all day, and there is just something about getting off the computer and just going sitting on the couch and just booting it up and not having to worry about drivers or any of that stuff. So
my God, you're so serious when you say that, because I am playing A Plague's Tale on my PC, and it is jaw dropping. It looks nice. I I got a RTX 3080, so it's looking good, and I'm getting decent frames, and I'm running it 1440 on my monitor, and it looks great. But then again, I'm playing on PC, so sometimes it crashes and stuff like that. And I mean, I understand it happens on the Xbox, but when I'm playing on PC, I get extra nervous about crashes and stuff like that because I've already had the game once restart my entire computer. Like the game like literally just stopped, it froze, and then my computer just restarted, and I was like, "Oh, that's not good." so PC like makes me an anxious gamer where like the console whenever like crash happens on the console, I'm just like, whatever. I don't sit there and dwell on it as much. And plus it's a lot quicker just to hit the Xbox button, turn it right back on, and all I have to do is hit the game button, as to where on my computer I have to maybe go into the settings, maybe dial something down a little bit.
Right. And that's the anxiety with PC game. I used to be PC Master Race, actually. I have had, high-end PCs in the past. It's been a while, honestly. I think Half-Life 2 was the last time I went that route. But, God, it's like, now that's decades ago, right? And it shows how old we're getting. But that to me, that was always the challenge of PC gaming. It's not that it's really a bad experience or there's really like all these issues all the time. It's just that when there is, you feel like it's your fault and you got to figure out the problem. Whereas something happens here and they tell you, okay, you're only gonna get 40 frames at the most. You're like, okay, that's what it is. I don't have to go in and mess with my settings. I'm not sitting there twiddling around with it trying to figure out the right balance of anything. So options are good, but sometimes you got so much going on in life, man, after kids and work and everything else. It's just like, just tell me what it is, and let's just roll with it. And if there's any issues, I'll reboot the Xbox. It's not my fault though, so you don't have to really overthink it, right? So that's kind of where I've gone. But I have thought about giving it another shot again, especially if Starfield's going to be 30 on consoles, because that's a lot of hours. That's not like a 20 hours cinematic game. That's the thing you're going to be in for maybe hundreds of hours, right? So
yeah, we can just cross our fingers on that one. Let's just cross our fingers on that one.
So we'll see, but
I love that the Don put he's like, crashing is all part of the experience on PC. He put it on there like it was like a label that should have been on the box when I bought it.
Right.
Like expect this type of fun with this console or PC or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely annoying, but at the same time, as much as it taketh away, it also giveth quite quite a bit of goodness, because I really like the way my games are looking. I just beat the original Dead Space on here for the first time. Never played Dead Space before, and I beat it on the first time on my PC, and I tell you what, that thing was crashing like a sumbitch as well. But I don't know. I don't trust the EA launcher either, though. I just don't at all. That thing has felt like it's been in beta for forever. I think it still technically might be in beta. I'm not exactly sure. But anyways, yeah, I just don't trust EA launchers at all. Especially, I tried to play Crysis, and that game just wouldn't load up for whatever reason. Just would not load up.
You probably, maybe your PC just doesn't run Crysis.
I guess it just does it, and you know what? I'm not going to force it to. It's fine. We can move on. We can play something else. But anyways, speaking of decades ago, because you said that when talking about the PC MR that you used to be part of, let's actually go back into your gaming history a little bit and talk about what really kind of got you into gaming. And you said the first console that you had was the Atari 5200. Am I correct?
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we talked pre-show, yep.
Yeah. So go on ahead and let me know what it was like having that console back then, because a lot of people I've heard, I've had the 2600. I've even heard of some people having, what was it, like the 76 or
78.
7800. 7800.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. It's kind of interesting because I don't feel like, in all the histories, and I listen to ILP all the time, all the people who come through their first console. I don't think anybody started off with a 5200 on Atari. I feel like, but that just is fitting for my family. We are always just a little bit different. So, I started off. I remember my dad came home one day, and we were poor kids. Like my dad and at that particular time was like scraping by, right? And I guess he found a Atari 5200 at Kmart for like $49. I guess they were going out of style at that time, starting to go out of business. And
Was it ever in style?
Yeah, it was never in style. It was like one of those things. It didn't sell, right? This is when Atari was starting to spiral, right, a little bit, and which didn't matter to us, man. That was like magic. Going into arcades was just the most amazing thing, and to bring any of that home was just insane. And we played that thing until I literally had blisters on my hands from holding that controller. Eventually, both controllers broke down, but we got that thing. It was bundled with Pac-Man. That's all we had for a long time. And then the only time we could get games after that is if we could find something in the bargain bin. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but the Kmart Blue Light Special.
Oh, I remember that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
man.
Like, so
I remember the big Kmarts with Little Caesars in them, Blue Light Specials. And
yes, sir.
Oh, man. My mom was all about that. We used to love Kmart.
Yeah, I mean, like that's what you had a shot every time we go with my dad. Every time he's going to go to the store, because there was a shot, right? We're going to go there and we're going to go digging for treasure. And I think we hit it like maybe 5 or 6 times, and we found a cartridge in there, and you could find them for like $5. I think that was our limit. Like, 5. So, eventually we found Defender. Eventually we found Space Invaders, Vanguard. So got a few games. And 5200, for being way under the radar, they did a really nice job of making versions that looked like the arcade, which you couldn't take for granted back then. If you remember, the 2600 Pac-Man was kind of janky, right? So so even though I started with that, I mean, it's kind of started with top of the line in terms of what we did get our hands on, or at least it felt like it, because when we go to the arcades, it felt like we were playing the same game at that point. So so it was a good time, man. Not a lot of games, but we wore our hands out. Probably got carpal tunnel at a really young age from that. But
Okay, so moving forward a little bit, so you're done. Like let's say you're done with the 5200 now. What were you moving on to from there, and what was the age range that you were in?
I think with Atari, I was probably around 5 or 6. I'm guessing. It's blurry at that age, right? Like I'm 40. I'll be 47 later this year. So, I'm old man now when it comes to gaming. Okay. So yeah, I was definitely I was a youngin' at the time, or maybe I was a little bit older than that. I could have been maybe under 10. We'll just say that.
Fair enough.
The reason why I'm trying to guess that range there is because I know there was a break, right? Like Atari kind of went out of business. Our controllers broke. We didn't have gaming for a little while in the home, and then one day we're back at that Kmart, and there was a demo there was a Rob the Robot, and there was a Super Mario Brothers. It was the NES came to America, and we saw it on a demo. And again, me and my brother, just every single time we had to go shopping with my parents just so we could sit there and gawk at that thing that we absolutely could not afford for a long time. But that ended up eventually becoming our next console, and that was really sort of the childhood console, right? That's the one that everybody in the neighborhood played. That's where we exchanged cartridges, and me and my younger brother were absolutely had a problem. We were addicted, and my mom would.
You were enamored.
Yeah, man. It was. My mom would force us off that TV and said, "You got to go outside and play. Like this isn't healthy." So we would go. We'd put some a couple cartridges in our pockets, and we go over a friend's house. Play some more. That was the life, man. So like, we moved from Atari to the Nintendo Entertainment System.
All right. So the Nintendo, I mean, obviously, I mean, so now you're playing with everybody else. You got the same stuff that everybody else probably has in their home. Nintendo was like the console to have during its during its hot commodity moments. What was your like game? Like, because everybody has like one or two like specific games that they just, you know, because back in those days it wasn't like you play the game once and throw it back. It was like you played the living hell out of one game and beat it to death, and sometimes it felt like you played it too much because it wouldn't turn on for quite some time.
You know what age group you are, whether if they know what you're talking about when you talk about blowing in the cartridges.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You know, and then doing the you put it in there, and you push it down, and you push it, you know, back up, and you try to get it just right, because after a while, you know, it stopped working. But yeah,
those
my
damn
game
pin readers, them damn pin readers. We didn't know anything. We thought it was us when it was the console, just so much friction going back and forth all the time. It just wore out the pins. But you're sitting there like, eventually, like, you'd use both thumbs and just line it up and maybe get that perfect angle of it in there, and then hit the on button, and then watch like especially on Mario, when like the thing slid up the screen, and sometimes it'd be just complete jank. And you're like, oh damn, I gotta slide it over just a little bit more the other way.
The good old days, man. So yeah, my game back then was probably the one that really stands out to me is Metroid, and it was the first thing that I actually got after Super Mario. I remember it was on my birthday. Back then, the only time we ever got games was we could get one for a birthday and one for Christmas, and that was all we would get. So yeah, so like you're saying, talk about playing the heck out of a game. Metroid was that thing that I got on my birthday, first game after Super Mario, and just sort of the environment, the kind of the tone of it, just like that eerie music and sound that they would play. It just still to this day I remember that. I remember the first time, you know, you find the secret passage, right? Like you blow up the floor and you fall through it, and you're like, oh my god, there's all this stuff over here. So it was that was like amazing, and I think that was my first experience actually exploring in a game, and so that's why that really stands out, you know, when it comes to exploration and you know, kind of testing things out, whereas, you know, Super Mario's, even though it had some secrets, it was very linear.
Did you join the dark side after your NES?
Oh, what do you mean? The best console of all time, Sega Genesis?
So yeah, that is a yes. That answer is an absolute yes. Loved the Sega Genesis. I like my first console that I played when I was young was probably the NES. But the console that I first cared about, the console that like kept me up at night,
right,
was the Genesis. Let me know what you were getting down on with the Sega Genesis back in the day.
Man, that was I think that really gosh, that was my console through my teenage years, and that's the first one that I went out and bought with my own money. I was, you know, I had a job at the time, right? And I finally could go out and actually start buying stuff. I didn't have to wait just for my birthday and Christmas. And yeah, of the 2D era, absolutely my favorite one. We did eventually get the Super Nintendo, but Sega Genesis, I don't know. There was just something about it wasn't just one game, right? It was just sort of the whole experience, everything from the box covers. I know just like those lines and everything, but there's just something that was like mysterious about it. And like, they would just always come out with these like quirky, weird, cool experiences. And I've always been a fan of Sega. Well, not always, but since that time, I was, became a big Sega fanboy, and obviously it was a console with the Mortal Kombat with blood. So
Mm-hmm.
it felt like it was tailoring more to a
Ain't
little
no
bit
green
older.
stuff spewing out. What is this?
Right. So it was the first time where it felt like gaming was trying to get a little bit older. And not that I mean, again, the Super Nintendo was a great system too, but back then, gaming was for kids, right? You didn't really, once you got to a certain age, even as a teenager, it's funny now, I can be 47 and I don't put myself on camera and say, hey, I'm a gamer. But back then, you got past like junior high and it's like the girls are like, you're still playing with the toys. Like that's kind of what it was like back then. I don't know if you remember that, but and so I felt like that was trying to like take it from just being a kids thing, right, to being something that was a little bit older. The sports games did a lot of that. Me and all my buddies, I mean, I just remember drinking when we weren't supposed to, sitting around, playing Sega Genesis and just talking crap to each other, whether it was in Madden or NHL, 94, like any of that stuff, man. It was like, just, even my friends that didn't play hockey at all, that was like the game we would play because you just go back and forth. And, those are some of the memories that come from that console, that it was like for me, the couch co-op or the group thing, right? Like you all get around and it was something that the guys could bond over. So they had really good memories from that.
Did you ever get like the multi-tap thing for the Sega Genesis where you could plug the 4 controllers in the front of it?
Oh, did I'm trying to. I feel like I bought almost everything that I shouldn't have for the Sega Genesis, but I for some reason can't remember if I was.
It was like this like little thing like about yay big, and it plugged right into the front right here of the Genesis, and it had 4 controller outputs, but like on the back of the multi-tap, it had 2 inputs that you shoved into both controller slots, and then it activated 4-player on it, and you could put in 4 controllers to play like games, like Streets of Rage, I think, like that.
Yeah,
I think you play like Streets of Rage and like some other like side scrollers that were up to 4 players. Really cool, crazy innovative, and that was Sega back in the day. That's what the allure was for me, is like, not only does this thing feel like adult with having, true NBA games with like all the teams and
the real players, right? Like
you got John Madden on it, which was pretty wild. Road Rash, which felt super adult. You're hitting people with chains, bats, and talking and they're like talking trash to you after races. Hang On, those great NHL and soccer games as well. I remember specifically one game called like Sunday Night Football with like Chris Berman on the front. It was like an ESPN Sports Center game or something. Man, the Sega was just like it was just a beast, man, and it was just a tough console. By the time I got it, I had to prop up the back with a Sega card with a Sega case, because my AC and like AV adapters were all like jank on it. So like if you wiggled the cord, it would shut off. You know what I'm talking about, because I'm not the only person that had to deal with that. A lot of people had to deal with stuff like that back in that day, especially with that console, because they put them so close together and stuff like that. And all these consoles back in the day are wired, so you freak out from a game and lift your controller up, you could be tossing your entire console across the room. My console was jank, but it was dope, and I loved it. Yeah, I still remember the original code for Mortal Kombat, the very first one. You hit ABACABB, and the guy would be like, "Get over here," and blood would start leaking down the screen. That was a very memorable console. My favorite one to talk about. I always get into my feels when I talk about that one right there. But
Yeah, man, that was part of that was just part of growing up in that era. And it's interesting to kind of look back because obviously Super Nintendo caught up, and
mhm,
a lot of people talk about it, maybe standing the test of time, but for whatever reason, maybe it was just the neighborhood I was in, but Sega Genesis was it. That's the one that all the dudes in high school had, right? Like that's the one that that had all the sports games, and eventually moved on to the Sega CD and the 32X. I eventually the thing looked like a like a reject transformer, but you know
right.
but you remember all that, right? Like it's just all the little add-ons and things like
Yeah,
that
I got
kind
them
of
right here. The CD with the 32X on top, and
Sewer
then
Shark.
oh yeah,
Yes.
yeah, for the CD, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sewer
Yeah.
Shark on there, and I mean I have a few other games for that right now, like not John Madden. I want to say Joe Montana
I
football.
had that. I think that was one of my. That game blew me away because I think no, that wasn't the first talking one. I remember the first game that was talking that was just like what, like back then that was like that holy crap moment, when a game actually you heard it talking to you. So
Right.
I think it was God, I don't remember which one was the talking football, but we did have Joe Montana, and they didn't have all the teams. You remember the little ambulance that just come and run everybody over on the screen to pick up
Oh yeah, yeah,
any
and
new
like
player?
it
Yeah.
show the animations of people getting hit. But
Yeah.
that was pretty
So
bad.
that was pretty good times.
Oh yeah, I think Madden was the first one that I heard talking on the screen that I know of, because like you'd get a first down and he'd just be like, hey, what a play, or you sack the quarterback, he'd be like, what a hit. Like he'd just say like little things like that, and it blew me away. Like, oh shoot,
Yeah.
John Madden's talking to me. But it was pretty dope for the time. Moving forward, what did you stick around with Sega? So did you go and start to get all those pieces together for it, like with the CD, the 32X? Did you piece together your Sega, or did you just move on to something else?
Yeah, it's interesting because as much as I like look back fondly on Sega, and I still, big fan of Sega. I back then I was always looking for the next thing, and so that's when I found the PC gaming. So I went into PC gaming for quite a few years actually back then. And when you jumped up from 2D to PC 3D graphics, it was a different experience, even compared to people playing on the original PlayStation, which I did get, and the N64, I got that as well. But when I would compare like a Half-Life or a System Shock 2, or some of the stuff that was out there on the PC was just sort of mind blowing, and so I got into that whole that rigmarole, getting the Voodoo graphics cards, whatever the newest one was. And I was all into PC gaming for a long time. I used to love the ability to kind of edit things. I would still play the original PlayStation and N64 to a lesser extent. I only got a few games for that, but and I did have some fun experiences on that the OG, but the Saturn I missed completely. I was gaming on the PC, and then that thing was already dead before I even considered getting back into adding consoles back into the rotation. So
Okay.
unfortunately, that's where kind of like me and Sega disconnected a bit, and we wouldn't
Uh-oh.
reconnect again until I would get on the OG Xbox. So which
Oh
would happen.
damn, you skipped the Dreamcast too?
I was all in on PC gaming at that time. Yep. I didn't get the PS2. I'm one of the few people that you'll talk to that's owned multi consoles over all these generations that never had a PS2. And
Yeah, that's
when that
sacrilegious
wave,
right there.
I know, man. It's like when that wave hit and everybody was out getting PS2s, and I looked at it and I saw like the bouncer and I saw like their version of Half-Life. I'm like, man, these aren't even as good as like the stuff I'm playing today. So I was like, whatever, it wasn't. I didn't get back into console again. I thought I was on console until one day I was at. I remember me and my ex were shopping for rings at the time, a separate story. But
Oh,
we
boy.
were in the we were in the mall, and I remember it was like, okay, we were like shopping around for that stuff. I had some time. We had a little bit of time after. I was like, hey, can I just go in there, walk, just check out. I don't remember if it was EB Games back then or one of those stores.
Like
And
Software
I saw
Center or something.
Yeah, one of those types of things. And I saw Halo for the first time on a kiosk, and oh my god, like that just kind of changed everything back then. So that's when I decided. It was a few weeks later, and at that time I wasn't supposed to be buying any more electronic stuff. I just had my PC. It was like saving up for that ring. My ex was expecting it.
Oh,
At the time, it was kind of
no.
anticlimactic. But it was like 2 weeks after playing on that demo. I'm at a Sam's Club, and I see, like, this is back when consoles were kind of hard to get. It was like a couple weeks after the launch. PS2 was sold out everywhere, and I saw a bundle with Halo in it. I'm like, oh, this is meant to be. So she comes home from work, and I'm like,
Oh, no.
I'm like, hey, honey, guess what? My parents got me an early birthday present. So I was back on consoles. And since then,
then he lied.
I passed my statute. What is it? The statute of limitations to be in trouble on that, right? So
I think so.
So yeah, that's kind of how I got back into the whole console, gaming again. And then for whatever reason, OG Xbox really captivated me. So from there, I really became a console gamer. I did one more time get a gaming PC to play Half-Life 2. Did a few more things, but jumped right back into the 360 probably within a year or two of that, and kind of really didn't look back too much from PC game at the point, because I did like the convenience of it. And once it got good enough, I didn't feel like I needed to be on the PC anymore.
There you go. Okay, so what was it like spec-wise that you liked about the original Xbox when you seen it? Because, I mean, obviously Halo's really cool and whatnot. Was it literally just Halo that brought you over, or did you look at like some of the stats that the Xbox had and was like, because when I looked at the original Xbox, I was like, man, you got internal storage.
It was a mini PC, right? It really
was literally just a PC that was formatted to only play games and music.
And I remember back then you would always think about them squeezing as much as they could out of the console, and it's like, well, this is like this is a gaming PC for $300. It's what it was, man. And so yeah, the specs, obviously, coming from the PC world, that made that transition easier. It also brought in a lot of the Western games. I mean, initially, I can't say that I was expecting all that. Initially, it was just like, there's Halo, and this is the bullet holes are staying in the wall. It's got cool physics. The elites are going, they're dodging me behind trees, and when I kill them, their bodies aren't disappearing. Like all the stuff that was just like console, peasant stuff. It wasn't there with Halo. And then, you look at the specs, and it was like that whole power thing did get me. It's like, you know what? I thought at that time, this is actually more powerful than the PC I'm gaming on. And it's like, so, okay, I'll just move over. And so, yeah, the power thing did get me. Now in time, the thing that I did like about it was it's kind of, it really brought in a lot of the Western developers that were PC centric at the time, because they couldn't get all the Eastern ones. If you remember, I remember PlayStation, I think, launched with probably more exclusives than any console ever, because of, like a lot of these developers weren't feeling Microsoft or didn't think they'd last. And so Microsoft went out to all these PC developers, and they brought in Unreal Championship, they brought in BioWare, they brought in Bethesda, and really were kind of just bringing in new developers, new games, everything from the Mech Assaults to the, oh my god, my cat is on the keyboard again, everything from the Mech Assaults to the Project Gotham Racings, like all that stuff. It was a lot of new stuff, and I thought that was exciting. It was an exciting time, I thought, for gaming. And I'm gonna get this cat off.
Yeah, that original Xbox to me, if I were to describe it in one word, I'd probably use the word thug. that console was a thug, like straight up. Like it had some of the most wild games that you could play. Like if Nintendo was family and PlayStation was a step outside of the family, like, you know, like bastard kind of child, like the Xbox was like the prison thug. like some of the games that it had on it was just like, how did they get the license to be able to get this game going on here? Because some of them were graphic. You remember The Suffering? The Suffering was something. That game was like mind torture.
Well, you know, the thing, I didn't have The Suffering, but you do, like, the games that they did have that really took advantage of it felt like they were a half generation up from everything else. And that's the reason why I never went back to the, you know, everybody had a PlayStation 2. I never felt like I felt like I was going backwards at the time, because I was a graphics whore, you know, coming from PC, and you know, the everything from the hard drive, everything kind of felt like a next level up. And you know, I remember like Ninja Gaiden, you know, even something like the Riddick, remember Chronicles of Riddick, like some of that stuff, like even like these less known games out there. I remember the Splinter Cell, the one that when they first brought that out, that came to the Xbox first, and like the lighting was just mind-blowing at the time. I don't think there was anything on PC that looked like that at the time that came out. So so yeah, it really, if you were a graphics person, it really sucked you in from that. And then after that, it became about the multiplayer. You know, once the Xbox Live launched, I was there day one. And this is probably, so like, my favorite consoles of all time, 1A, 1B, Genesis for the 2D era, the OG Xbox to this day, even more than the 360, because 360 got...
Now we're friends. We're officially friends.
and I know I'm like in the minority here, but it was, to me, that was a time when it was more magical, because they were really being innovative. They're trying things. You didn't know what to expect.
Dangerous.
I mean, you go online with the original Xbox day one. You know, I'm jumping on there. Somebody's talking shit about. Can I say that? About my mom. You know, in a voice mask. You know, like with the squeaky voice. Remember they had the voice mask thing going on there.
Yeah.
And then I remember staying up all night playing Unreal Championship, and then, you know, made a friend and stuck on my friends list for years after that. And actually, I have a few people that are on my friends list that come from, that I met within, you know, the first few weeks of that thing being out, and they're still today friends of mine. You know, we had no kids back then, and now we all have kids and stuff. And it's just kind of crazy, just the innovation, just the not knowing what you're going to expect, the new IPs that would come out. You know, Knights of the Old Republic. I mean, all that stuff, man. It was just like, you just didn't know what was around the corner. And I thought that was a cool time in gaming. You know, it wasn't so much about just, you know, retreading things. And it wasn't, and they were really reinventing how you thought about gaming. And, you know, to this day, man, I remember the guys that I did, you know, Halo 2 game nights with. I remember Return to Castle Wolfenstein nights, you know, getting into the trenches with the blow torches and stuff like that. And it was just, you know, like, again, getting on there. And I remember my ex, you know, she's my ex these days, but you know, like just laughing at me when you walk into the room, seeing me on that headset. And it was back then, you know, people probably forget this, but you know, long distance phone bills were expensive, right? Talking to somebody that lived out of the country was really expensive, or even out of the state. And I just remember thinking, how cool is this, that for, at the time, $50 a year, I could talk to my best friend who was in a different state, and it costs, there's no long distance phone bill with that, right? Like that was something different, man. And so, yeah, that despite having a short life, it's still probably one of the most, one of the best times, I thought, in gaming, because of the innovation, surprises, and the community aspect of it.
Yep, absolutely. I'm there with you. My biggest thing was for music because I was huge into listening to music. I used to listen to. I used to plug a white cable from like the console into the TV, and then like the red cable from like my stereo system into the TV, or something like that. So then I was getting
I remember that.
So I was getting the output of the music that I want to listen to,
Right.
and then the output of the video game at the same time. But I'd only get the video game in one speaker and my music in the other speaker, and Xbox was the brains behind bringing that all together, and the way that they meshed it was just insane. Where you'd go into a cut scene and your music that you put onto the console would turn off or start to lower or dim for the cutscene, and then it'd come back on after the cutscene and stuff like that. Or for like ESPN, like 2K football,
2K,
where
still the best football game of all time.
Absolutely,
2K5.
Score a touchdown, and your song that you asked for to be on for every time that you're playing at home and you score a touchdown comes on, or you get an interception and a certain song comes on. Like, you could just tailor everything about that game how you want it, from the jerseys to the music to you can make, I believe you can make your own plays and stuff like that too. Like that thing that I understand that game was third party. Yes.
Yeah.
But on the PlayStation 2, it was pictures when it went to the like Sports Center moments with Chris Berman and stuff like that. It was just still pictures, and it would like it'd be a still picture of you in your game and whatnot. But on the Xbox, it was the whole play. Like, you got the whole play. So Steve Berman saying the 30, the 20, the 10. Right. Yeah, you got to see it in live motion, and everyone's telling me, why you got an Xbox? Why don't you get a PlayStation? I'm like, because the Xbox is way stronger. Like, I get to see my whole play. You looking at a like a photo reel. Like,
listen to us talking like fanboy. No, I was back then, though, man. You knew, right? You knew all the stuff that was better back then. That was back in our young days. It's back in these days. I like to think that I'm a upstanding adult, but back then, you'd argue.
I'm a classy fanboy.
Yeah, now I'm a classy fanboy. But back then, man, yeah, you knew all the little advantages. And it's funny, though, you talk about it. It's not even just compared to that time. I mean, you look at some of the stuff they were doing, it's stuff they don't do now. And part of it is because of licensing and restrictions, right? But, like that whole ripping your music thing, the fact you could download your friends' profiles. Remember that? Like, how they played? So, like, if somebody liked to run a lot with Vic and they're on your friends list, you could download their profile and it would play like them. It would kind of mimic them. Sort of like...
I forgot all about that.
Sort of like the drive-atars now in
Forza.
Forzas. Yeah, but I thought they did a better job because you could tell they definitely played different than the computer. And I remember racing the Ghost in, Project Gotham Racing 2 of your friends. And that was different. Like, all these things were just like outside the box. It's like they're always trying to think of something creative or new. Whether it was Steel Battalion, a controller, they sold, how many, they couldn't have sold more than a few hundred of those things, but like, just some of the crazy stuff they kept trying. It was a good time, man, in gaming for sure. We're spending we could probably talk about that all day. We're going to have to do a video though, comparing NFL 2K to today's Madden, showing that halftime show, man, versus what you get now. Now it's just like nothing, right? Like
it literally is nothing.
It is like you can tell there's no competition now. It was better back then than it is today when it came to extra features. And
you need to tell K Mega that he just doesn't want to give it its flowers. He's like, oh, it was a great game for its time, but it could not stand against it right now. And I'm like, oh my god, stop it!
Like even the gang tackling. Remember Madden still couldn't figure out gang tackling for years.
Yeah, there's just people diving everywhere and one person tackling the ball carrier. To where 2K had the gang tackling. They had the toe step, the toes on the sideline catches, and in the corner of the end zone passes, and it was wild how dope that game was back then. But anyways, moving forward, because yeah, we could definitely talk about the nostalgia of the Xbox for quite some time. Because I'm just like you in the sense of I thought that the original Xbox meant more to me than the 360. The 360 was fantastic. It was a dope continuation of what was done prior. But like when it comes to impact, it's something that like made me see something completely different because
Yeah.
I was because like before I got an Xbox, I had a PlayStation 2 and a GameCube, and I also had a gaming PC that I played on. I'd play like Need for Speed Hot Pursuit on my PC and like Max Payne and stuff like that. I was playing on my PC. Shout out to Remedy. Love that. I absolutely loved that game. But once I got the Xbox, it was just like, especially as a kid, because I want to say I was like maybe 12 or like 13 around that time. As a kid, like, and always needing to, whenever I got a PlayStation or a Dreamcast or a GameCube or PlayStation 1, whatever, I always had to remember, when you buy the console, remember to buy the memory card. Remember to get the memory card, and then on top of it, like being able to take the memory card. The only thing I missed, which I eventually got to figuring out, that you could get the memory cards that slide into the controllers that are portable for the Xbox, which ended up being really clutch. But at first, the only thing I missed was being able to lug my memory just from one place to another, because I didn't want to grab the entire console and bring it with me. That's the only thing that sucked. But other than that, it was just like, man, this console, I'm using it to get ready for school in the morning by turning it on and having my music playlist right there. It encouraged me to get a whole setup for like speakers and everything like that, because I was like, all my music is here.
5.1. Yep, that was the first one that did that. Yep.
I was big on music, and I used to make my house shake. My mama didn't mind it because I was jamming the kind of music that she liked. So like, so yeah, all that old school music and stuff like that. I was jamming it growing up, and you know, Tupac and stuff like that. My mama was digging it, so I was digging it. I was blasting it. My neighbors hated it probably. But then again, being able to listen to the exact music I was just listening to while playing a game, turning on Conflict Desert Storm and running in the sand, listening to Still Ballin' by Tupac, is one of the best experiences I can remember as a kid. It's just like, wow, I'm in the middle of freaking Baghdad listening to Tupac. This is insane, right? That's crazy. What is going on? But anyways, moving forward, was Xbox something that you just stayed with after the original Xbox? Because you said earlier, you know, the only reason you moved to Xbox is because it was very similar to the PC. Well, the next generation, the PlayStation, attempted this exact thing that the Xbox did in the last generation. They made the most powerful console of the generation, and they made you know by price tagging it the way that they did with that $600. So you knew you were buying something different. You weren't just buying something like a DVD player. You were buying the Blu-ray player, Linux, damn near, and you know, you were you were getting all the complicated stuff.
Yeah, it's so back then, and if you remember, like the PS2 outsold the original Xbox 6-1. It felt like the Xbox was constantly holding on by a thread in the gaming industry. Like the only thing that
still does sometimes.
I know.
Up until these acquisitions,
right. Only thing that was kind of keeping it there was Halo. It felt like, and then moving to the 360. You're right. You know, the every up to that point, I actually, if you kind of go back, I mean, I switched every single generation, right? I went from Nintendo to Sega to PC as primaries. You know, I had secondary systems, but as primaries, and then to the Xbox as a primary. The next generation is the first time I didn't make that jump, and The only reason, and it was difficult because yeah, you're right. When PlayStation came out, I remember the E3 2005. I mean, I don't know if you remember some of the articles and media sites that came out after that E3. They're like, Killzone killed Xbox, basically. You remember? Because like they blew away whatever was that E3 like was a sort of just a blowout for the presentation aspect of it. And they were like, people were even, I remember a lot of the articles were like, why are they even launching this right now? Like, this doesn't even, this isn't really a big enough step and things like that for the 360. The only reason I stuck with it, and it was sort of, it was tenuous a bit at the time, but it was really just because it was about the community, it was about my friends, and I knew they were going to stick with it. It was about Halo, so I wasn't going to give up that IP. That was like my favorite thing on that console. And I also like the fact that they still seem to have this relationship with BioWare going in. If you remember, they announced before that thing launched that Mass Effect, the makers of Knights of the Old Republic were going to be in Jade Empire. We're going to be doing a new IP in Unreal 3 at the time. So I was excited about that. I was excited what they showed with Gears. And so, yeah, I decided I was going to go ahead and stick with it. And I didn't expect it to really hold its own. And just things kind of changed the following year. If you remember, then it was about giant crabs at the other, Sony show and things like that. But, so I stuck with it. I thought the early years of the 360 were really cool. My daughter was born, my first at the time. And it was like only a few months after. So actually, it launched a few months after she was born. She was born in summer of 2005, and I just remember like her sitting in my lap while I'm playing Geometry Wars and stuff like that. So I had some really good memories of that. And the early years were kind of exciting. I felt like the back half of the generation got a little stale in terms of like the innovation. All the things that I really liked about the platform became really, it was like, okay, now they're just cashing in and stuff like that. In addition to that, I kind of stepped back from gaming for a few years. So the back half of that generation, I decided to get other parts of my life in order. And so I kind of stepped away from gaming for a little while, which is probably why, backwards compatibility and things later on would be, a nice deal. And then even moving into the following generations after that, again, I thought about switching over after Don Matrick, but I'm like, but Halo's still here, so I kept sticking with Halo. Now, eventually, I would go on and get everything, and that's kind of where I'm at these days. I used to be I used to just think it was a little bit overkill because I still don't. I don't got time for all this stuff. It's like I got backlogs on every system, and it's like, what am I doing?
And now you got Game Pass, right?
Right. It's like
permanent backlog.
It's insane, man. It's like I got all this stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, this is a year. It's going to be a slow year. I'm going to fire through some of my backlog, and it's been difficult. But to stay out of that, I just realized you just kind of accept that it's never going to happen. That's why I'm not a completionist. If I get a few hours and I'm good enough, it's like, okay, move on to the next thing. But yeah, so like these days, like I do have all the stuff, but that's why it's been my primary platform. My friends, for the most part, are all been built up through the years there. And, we've gone from young men to old men with kids in that time.
Okay, so PS3 didn't even get it at all?
No. And like I said, second half of the generation, probably when I would have. And I think at the time I was tempted because of the baseball thing. That was the thing that kind of made me want to jump over. But because of the show, and I think when I saw Last of Us and stuff like that, I'm like, oh, like, do I want to jump over? But I just wasn't gaming enough at the time to justify, adding more stuff. And I was trying to detox myself in a way, just from sitting in front of the TV, not necessarily gaming only, but just, at that time I was trying to get away from the TV more and get back in shape. I used to be very, very overweight, and I was like, okay, I'm like going to get away and start balancing my life a little bit. Now I'm able to do all that stuff in balance, but back at that time I felt like I needed to completely separate myself from the TV altogether.
Fair enough. So then the Xbox One generation came through.
Yeah.
You hear TV, 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 TV. Did you buy it?
I did eventually. I didn't. This was the first generation in a couple where I didn't buy it anything in the launch window. When they did all that stuff, I'm like, I'll just stick with the 360 and I'll decide later. Because again, had all my friends list built up, Halo fan, so I'm not. It's like I can't really switch, but this just doesn't look good. This looks like it's dead on arrival. Like that whole thing. Don Matrick just is so punchable. I'm just kidding, but not really.
My God. Getting messy.
Yeah. I mean, like that guy was just like, you just got up on the camera and you're like, this guy's representing like this is not. I was used to, going from the Black Lee and Ed Freeze over to guy who was Peter Moore, Peter Moore and like basically they always felt like they had people early on that really understood the industry and were thinking big, like outside the box. This guy kind of came in and just seemed like a Microsoft executive. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know, man. This was, and honestly, that generation in general just didn't really feel very, until the Game Pass thing, didn't really feel, for me, it just felt like they're going through the motions in a lot of regards, and I know Sony killed it. Eventually, that's one of the reasons I finally got a PlayStation again. Was it's like, okay, well, Microsoft's not doing anything here, so let me give somebody else a shot,
So let me go on ahead and ask, did you get a PS4 then during that generation?
I got the Pro. Eventually I jumped in with the Pro line.
So you went from saying, excuse me, Sony, to come home, Sony.
Yeah, eventually, when the Pro launched, I decided that was a good time to jump on there. And there was a lot of stuff I'd missed over the years. So
so let me get this straight. This is your first PlayStation since the original PlayStation.
Yep, I skipped the 2 and the 3.
Oh man. So then I imagine you're just like, man, there's a lot of stuff for me to catch up on when you got that.
There definitely was. And, Last of Us, actually I played that with my daughter. Interesting, the same one that was sitting on my lap when I was playing Geometry Wars. She's like, Daddy, I want to stay up. I'm like, you can't see this stuff. Your mom, me and her mom were divorced. And it's like, your mom would, I'd never hear the end of it if she knew I was playing like our, mature rated games in front of a, little kid. She's like, I won't tell Mom. And she's like, I'm just going to stay up and watch you play it. Like, it's just like, this doesn't scare me. And so I was like, all right, don't say anything. And so we played through that together. That was really cool. She still wants me to play through the 2 with her. Now she's just turned 17 and she's like, I said, we're going to play the second one, but I read ahead, or, I looked ahead and I'm like, I feel like it's going to ruin the story. That was such a good story, man. I don't want to ruin the memories. It's like, and I told her that too. I'm like, you know what? We should just remember it the way we did.
And, oh man.
Like
it's a twisty story. It's a twisty story, and it makes you feel different.
Ellie and Joel.
Yeah, I was gonna say it makes you feel different about the people that you loved.
Yeah. So I don't know. She still tells me to this day. She's like, we got to go finish that story because we did start it, but then I read ahead, and I'm like, it's like, oh man, they're gonna ruin Ellie. Like that was like the cool thing. It was like a messed up zombie apocalypse version of a daddy-daughter road trip, right?
Right. Sure was.
That's kind of what it was. And I told her, I says, hey, you can only talk like Ellie if you go through the zombie apocalypse, but you can't use that language. So it was stuff like that. I played the first Horizon Zero Dawn with her too. I think she, Last of Us was the one that really stuck though. So yeah, there's definitely some cool things that stuck out. Obviously God of War, which I'm looking forward to the sequel this year. But yeah, so I got all this stuff now. I still game mostly on Xbox just because you'll find me on Halo half the time, and then half the time is split with every other game. That's just
fair enough. So now we are upon what's the 9th generation, I believe, Gen 9, and we got Series X, Series S, Switch, and PS5 at the helm.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have all of them, or do you only have a few different?
Actually, I think I have everything. I got the X, the S, the PS5 digital, and then the Switch. So, yeah, got them all here. PC next.
Oh, snap. So this is the first time the PC's in last place.
Yeah.
You literally copped everything but the thing that, like, really got you into it. Crazy hard as an adult.
Yeah, no, you're right. I switched over the years, but PC is, like I said, man. Now, back then I was not working on a PC. These days I'm on my PC all day doing technical PC-ish things, So it just is nice to kind of just take a break and not worry about my settings. I do have something that was capable, but it's not even as strong as the Series X, so I don't really use it, So unless it's a strategy game. Oh, we got Mr. Lemon joining us. What's up, Lemon?
Yeah, Lemon's here. Appreciate the brother for stopping through. He said he shared, liked, and supported, so I really appreciate that, brother. And Matt Likes Games, welcome to the chat. Welcome anybody else that happens to be watching out there. Appreciate y'all for stopping through, going through one bad mother's history in gaming and whatnot right now.
Yes.
Right now, we are at the current generation. We went through all of his past stuff already, but I want to know, like, what is some of the most anticipated stuff that you have coming out for all of these consoles? So I guess go one at a time. So start with Xbox.
Yeah, I mean, for Xbox, I think that the easy one. I'm not going to be too original here. Starfield. It feels like it might be the most, next gen or maybe bring that sense of wonderment back, right? I don't think we've had any sort of like awe-inspiring thing yet this generation. There's a lot of good games. Elden Ring is awesome, but yeah. So looking forward to Starfield on the Xbox. PlayStation's probably easy. God of War is coming up here soon. In Switch, I don't know, man. What do I? You know what? Metroid Prime.
Oh wow, that's a reach. You went straight for a reach right after that. I was thinking you were gonna say something like the new like Breath of the Wild or whatever it's called. Like I don't remember what that damn game's called already.
I'll probably get it. I'm not like anti-Nintendo or anything. I just don't spend that much time on it these days. It does. Metroid is the one I told you like early on. Metroid is like the one IP that really stands out from them. It was one of my favorite games of the generation. On the I didn't mention it. I did pick up a GameCube actually at some point.
Oh yeah,
in Metroid Prime. For Metroid Prime, actually, that was the reason I picked it up, because I needed to play the new version of that. So I am looking forward to seeing that come back to life. But yeah, Nintendo mostly is there for kid road trips.
Okay, and if you were to build a PC, and let's say you went for the jugular, crazy, you lost your freaking mind and decided to spend crazy amount of money, and you got like something like a 4090. Let's go there. So top of the line of all, what's the first game that you would want to play on it, whether it's out right now or not?
Probably Starfield. I mean, that's honestly the thing I'm thinking about as I'm thinking about building that PC, because I'm thinking about putting that on the 77-inch at the highest, make sure it's at least 60 frames. Maybe we'll add some ray tracing to it. I don't know. We'll see what I can accomplish with today's tech. But yeah, I want to see that in all its glory.
Okay, so Starfield it is. He said a Starfield across the board. He just wants his hands on it. He just want to play it. Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
All right, so fantastic. Let's get into some of the reasoning behind you getting into content creation, because I'm kind of curious about that. Matt Likes Games says Starfield, smart man. Anyways, yeah, I'm really excited for that game. I keep almost forgetting the game that I'm most excited for next year, which I kept telling people at first my most excited game was Starfield, but it's actually, don't laugh at me, but it's Ark Survival Evolved 2.
Really? Well,
Yes.
I've never played it, so I never played the original. I know what it looks like, but I know people get addicted to it. So hey, more power to you for not following the crowd. We never do, right?
Yeah, no, I
We
do
do
my
our
own
own
thing out here. I do my own thing.
Yep.
I am crazy stoked for Starfield, but yeah, Ark is something I've put over 150 days into.
Whew.
The first one, so I want to do numbers similar to that when it comes to the second one, if it's good enough.
All right.
If it's good enough. But yeah, moving on. So what other so what actually got you into content creating, and like what made you want to take a step into that circle? Was it and actually what generation did you start doing it?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's kind of an accident, the fact that I'm in this at all, but it really ended up being a creative outlet. For me, somebody, growing up, like I said, we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't get a lot of toys when we were younger. Like my mom wouldn't buy us Transformers because she said, we're not spending that money, or you're not using all your birthday money on something that's going to break in a week. So, it was like one of those things where we had to get really creative. And so I remember I used to write my own stories. I used to grab construction paper and toilet paper rolls and build my own Transformers and stuff like that. So always had this like creative aspect of me growing up, but let that go as an adult. And so coming back and seeing the opportunity to get into content creation was really just a way, I think, an opportunity to reconnect with that sort of younger self that was, like I was just happier. I was like, everything wasn't always serious. It wasn't always, I went through that period of life where it was like, I'm just going to be a serious adult and, do serious adult things. It's just, I realized I wasn't happy, man, and so I think there was just maybe an epiphany one day. It's just like, what, screw what everybody else thinks or what the expectations are. It's like, yeah, you got to pay your bills. You got to do the right things for your kids, but figure out what makes you tick, what makes you happy. And so, I've always been into gaming. Obviously we went through over 40 years of it. And then you combine that with some ability to be a little bit creative. And I thought it was an opportunity. And the whole way I got into this was really an accident. I just used to go on to, I don't really post there as much these days, but I used to go on a Reset Era and, argue with people or write long novels to respond to people. And John and Nick, who kind of started up Xbox here, John reached out. He's like, hey, you write good words. Why don't you come and start writing over here? And so I tried that out, and initially, it still is like, it's just like a side thing, but it is a fun thing that I definitely want to continue to evolve and do. One of the things that I'll be looking to do over the next year is actually with the upgraded PC is start doing more creative video content. So that's what I would like to get into at some point. But yeah, it was sort of an accident, and then they started to gain some more traction, and is like, John be like, hey, why don't you write an article about this? And I'm like, all right, and start throwing out stuff there, talk crap about Jim Ryan. It's fun.
So it was literally the lead up to Halo Infinite that even got you into the content creating space.
That was the first podcast that I hosted. I did jump on some podcasts previous to that. So yeah, so I mean, like I started popping on the podcast originally. I think the first podcast I actually jumped on was Brabs. I've known him since the day one of Xbox Live. He was a beta tester. He invited me on a show one day.
He's talking about Basement Radio Arcade podcast.
Yeah, Enrique. So I've known him for over 20 years. And he's like, hey, why don't you jump on here one day? And so I did. And I'm like, oh, that wasn't too bad. So, and then eventually I started jumping on more, and eventually I jumped on Boom's podcast. And I guess, like I said, now it's like, where's Waldo? I just hey, if you're going to invite me, I'll be happy to come on if I can make the time. So I started jumping on podcasts a lot, just as because I like to talk about gaming. So and the podcast that we created, like I said, it was just like, well, here's a chance. There's not a lot of Halo podcasts out there at the time. I was predicting Halo to make a big comeback. I don't mean to laugh, but hey, there's still a lot of opportunity. Still a lot of opportunity out there.
You ain't gotta laugh.
In a tough state. It's in a tough state right now, but it's still my it's still my top IP of all time. So I'll still talk about it, even if it's not always positive.
Well, I think if you're a real fan, you should be critical. You should be extra. In fact, you should be the most critical, as if you're a fan of something, instead of I ain't finna tell you that I love Ark, and I'm gonna sit here and tell you there ain't nothing wrong with it, because that's a fucking lie. I mean, there's a lot wrong with my favorite game. There's a lot wrong with Halo. I mean, if you're a huge fan of anything, you know that something's wrong somewhere. Something ain't completely working properly everywhere. There is no such thing as a perfect game.
No, there
is. Even if it's as crispy and pretty as possible, God of War 2018, you can find somebody that's like that has a list of shit wrong with it.
And I definitely could. I'm probably not as passionate about that because it's not the one that I've spent the most time in over the last couple decades. But you're right, and I think the thing I try to balance that out with fairness, right? Try not to get overly emotional. Like I do when I watch my Detroit Lions or anyway.
Oh, you didn't say you're a fan of Detroit. What are you doing over here?
Man, our teams are struggling. You think Halo's struggling? Try to be a Lions fan. That's a whole nother podcast though. So we won't go down Detroit Lions territory.
It sounds like you definitely don't want to go down that route. All right, fair enough. So all right, so you got into podcasting, doing a bunch of different shows and whatnot, and on Xbox era with like Special Nick and all those guys over there. What has been some highlight moments for you as a content creator? Something that really made you feel like you were in the right space?
Honestly, it was probably the moment where I decided I wanted to do more of it. I remember writing a piece, and I won't some of the stuff's a bit outdated today, but
no, go on ahead and elaborate. Do your thing, man.
Yeah, grab a drink. But this is now I'm talking to the microphone. No, so one of the things that really stuck out about the content creation, I sat down and started writing, and I remember I was writing it sort of like
I don't know what. Oh my goodness. Can you speak? Oh my goodness. I don't know what just happened to his sound. That is interesting. That is concerning. Oh, okay. So I got sound back for me, but I did not get his sound back, which is something. Don't know what the hell is going on. Awesome. Can you hear me at all? Oh yeah, you can hear me, so I can't hear you. Oh, that's awesome. No, I can't hear you right now. I'm gonna exit the call and come back in. All right, can you still hear me?
Voice and video.
Okay, now I can hear you. Now I can hear you.
Okay.
That whole last like 3 minutes, just like nothing. I heard nothing. You were going off, and I couldn't hear anything, and I don't know what exactly even happened. All I did was grab my drink and sit down, and just everything cut off. That was insane.
It's all good, man.
And I think it has something to do with me playing Plague Tale earlier, because my computer has been acting super funny with certain things.
This is what I'm talking about, man. This is what I'm talking about. PC gaming, it messes up everything.
Oh yeah, it really does. There's probably an update somewhere that I gotta do. There's probably some drivers that I need to update in NVIDIA and all that jazz. Anyways, so I apologize for that. So if you can, from the top.
Yeah, so I think the question, and I probably went off topic a little bit, anyways. But I think the question you asked was, when did you know that you wanted to be in this content creation?
Yep.
And one of the things that I go back to is, when I was a young kid, again, writing stories, doing creative things, and over the years, got serious, right? And I kind of let a lot of that creative side of me go. And during the pandemic, it was, had to change up what I was doing day to day, right? I wasn't getting out there as much back in the day, or back a few years ago when the pandemic first started. And so I do remember writing an article. I was like, hey, I'm just going to take a shot at this. I wrote something for John and Xbox Era, and it was something that, I remember him going, oh, wow, this is actually really good. We need more of this stuff. And, for me, it was like, even though I was trying to talk about something that I guess everybody in the community was talking about at the time, it was like me trying to find a way to be creative with it, right? Trying to put my own spin on it, trying to build it into a story, try to come at it from different angles. And, it was more, what I'd like to be able to do is not just kind of like report on stuff, but really kind of tell a story about what's kind of happening, right? Like when I talked about the whole Game Pass in the early years, I was talking about how Satya Nadella was mentored by the guy who started Netflix, because everybody always says, Netflix of games, where is he coming from with that? So, taking these like unique things that maybe people don't really think about, taking a topic that's maybe overplayed in some respects and trying to figure out how to make it come at it in a different way, so you just don't, so it's not, people aren't hearing the exact same thing, or maybe they learn something new. That's, in a way, that's still being creative to me, even though you're not really making a fictional story, right? So that's fun. Next up is going to be video, trying to figure out how to make it more fun, because I do sound sometimes like a professor when I'm talking. Well, I'm just kind of like, I ain't telling the story, but I need to, put a little bit more flair into it, I think. So that'll be the next aspect of it. But it being able to write was something that was therapeutic, was sort of an outlet, and something I want to be able to continue to do. And and just figuring out ways to try to deliver information or content that is not not the exact same thing people have heard, 10 times before me, right?
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean that's pretty fantastic. So it sounds like you got a whole lot planned ahead.
Yes, sir.
You still just need to put a little bit more paintbrush to pad,
Yep.
essentially.
Yep.
You just need to get it
It
out
comes a
there.
long way, right? Like we were talking about earlier. I look at the podcast we were doing early and I just cringe about it. But a lot of the interesting thing I would say about content creation, about anything where you're challenging yourself is it doesn't matter what it is. It feels like it all relates together. Like what you do in content creation can relate to stuff you do at work or other things you do, because it is like a learning process, right? You put yourself out there, you challenge yourself, you kind of like mess up a little bit, and you come back, you do a little bit better. There's like a high to that. It's like, oh, I'm getting good. Like I did something good this time. And there is that aspect. I think there is this aspect of it. It is almost like I don't know, learning how to do anything growing up again. It's that whole process of learning and growing, and something like this, man, like even getting in front of a camera just would have sounded insane to me. Like putting myself out on YouTube with my face, it just you would have said that like a year and a half ago, I would have just like no way. I would have broke out into sweat just talking about it. But it's things like challenging yourself and taking things that maybe make you uncomfortable or that you're not great at, and learning how to get good at it it's a fun experience. So that's part of it too, in addition to being an outlet.
Well, I guess I'm kind of curious now what makes you comfortable at this specific time to do this stuff? Because I mean, as you were saying, like, you needed to find something that was fun to do. You got bored of just like the repetitive lifestyle of just adulting every single thing, and you
Right.
wanted to bring you wanted to bring some of that childhood wonder back.
Mhm.
So I want to know, like, what has you thinking, or what does have you comfortable in a space like today? Is it the people that you engage with? Is it your personality that like makes you want to like stand up and be who you are, loud and proud? Or like, what is the alluring factor in it at the end of the day that keeps you just kind of wanting to do more? Like, what doesn't push you away?
I mean, that's a really good question, because if you're always just focused on results, it can be
Daunting.
yeah, daunting, frustrating, all that stuff, which I don't think I do. I honestly, I think you almost have to push that away and say that's not going to be important. But it really is. I think a lot of all the things you're talking about, I think it is the community aspect, right? It is the people, it is being in touch with the wonderment, gaming, just the art, the um I don't know, discovery of things, and like just the creativity of it all. So I think all those things kind of drive me to keep doing stuff here. And then it's again, it's sort of like when you're doing content creation, there's not just like one thing either. You can do writing, you can write, you can do a podcast, you can make a video, you can change things up anytime you want, right? You can be your own. I'm going to do a different show now. It is like this blank template. And it's just, I think that gets exciting because it's a blank template. You can, it's a sandbox you can play in. And again, it takes you back to being a kid, right? Because it is like just this big sandbox, and you can play in it and you can get good at things. But more than anything, it's fun to explore and try things. And I think like what you were saying there too is like finding out sometimes about yourself. And I, just kind of realized going through the motions and trying to please everybody else and all those types of things at certain stages in life, sometimes you just got to go like, you know, what makes me feel like me? Where can I be me? Right. And this seems like a good place, man. I love being around all the diversity of people and from all different walks of life and
That to me,
backgrounds.
that's one of my favorite parts is just the
Yeah.
diversity of it. Just to hear, just knowing where I come from, being
Yep.
proud of where I come from, but looking
Right.
across the aisle and seeing, hey, this person's standing right next to me. I wonder if they went through all the same crazy shit that I did.
Yeah.
Or somebody
No,
that's standing next to you and you know they didn't go through all of that. It makes you wonder how they even got next to you in the first place. So no matter how it happens, you're just like always just like, how'd you get here? Or like, or
right.
the curiosity is wild. Sometimes I find somebody that's younger than you that knows a crap ton of stuff, and I'm like, hold up, like, whoa, how did you know all these games better than I did? And I actually lived through the time, and you were not around. You were not around during this time. Or better yet, the person that's like, like 65 years old or whatnot, and they're just now getting into it. It's like, whoa, like, I thought you would have had so much more knowledge than me, but I'm over here teaching you stuff.
It's so cool. And I think, and now that you said it, that is really it. That is the number one. If we're going to go to number one, it really is the fact that gaming does seem to bring so many different people together. For whatever reason, there's not a lot of things that bring us together in this world, right? We can't even agree whether it's raining or not these days. You can't agree on science. We can't even agree what we're seeing with our own eyes anymore. And it's like
that's a fact.
But it's so cool. Like, I listen to like ILP, like they're like those guys I think are similar ages to me. And like hearing those guys, they're in a completely different neighborhood than I was kind of growing up. Right. But I hear them talk about, sitting around the Sega Genesis. And I'm like, I think about me and my boys back in the day, right? And it brings you together, and it's so cool. Even within this community, we got people like from all different walks of life, whether they're we got developers and lawyers and reporters, and then we got just guys just working, it's kind of like all types of backgrounds and neighborhoods and from different countries. I mean, like I even look at it like Xbox Era. We're from like like Australia, UK, US. It's like Canada, like across, like really across the globe, and like just kind of seeing that something like this can pull people together in a time when there's not a lot of things that pull people together is a pretty awesome thing. And it takes me all the way back to even just being like the first time I ever gamed, and my dad bringing us to, the arcades. And my dad was not a gamer, but he gamed with me at the arcade. And that was like one of the best memories. And my siblings, my sisters were there. My mom, it's like bringing the family together. Then it was me bringing all my friends together, sitting around the couch, drinking 40s in high school. Not that we were then, but like on a Saturday night. And then it's like, to college doing that. And then it was like the next step was reconnecting with people that you lost touch with over Xbox Live and making new friends. And now it's this, man. And it's like with gaming, that really is the biggest thing. And it's like for somehow all this diversity in art and expression, but it's just a lot of different people too. And it's really, really cool to kind of, that's probably the best part of it for me.
One of the cooler things you said earlier that really reminded me of why gaming got to where it's like okay to go to school and talk about it and stuff like that. I feel like when you said something about online earlier, where you could, pretty much have a collect call with somebody on the other side of the earth,
right?
But you're not paying collect call, charges. and whatnot. I think that was probably the moment where it was okay for your adult to be a gamer
Yep.
now, because now it's just like, it's so versatile, and now you can openly talk to somebody, or you could hope that you would be able to talk to somebody that's around your same age somewhere else. Yeah, you could go to work and talk about it. It wasn't that cool quite yet to go to work and talk about it and go to school and talk about it. But I feel like once you had like Xbox Live and you went and, you had Call of Duty or Halo or something like that, or SOCOM or whatever back in that time, and you told somebody like, yo, you told one person, yo, I play online at school. And they're like, what game? You say Call of Duty or something like that. They just so happen to have a 360 as well. And then they are online as well. And then they have like 3 other friends that they game with. And you have your like 5 or 6 or 3 other friends that you game with. And then you're a big ass gaming circle all of a sudden. And then I feel like that's when it spreaded right there. Because when you had your OG Xbox, PlayStation 2, before they really, because those were online systems. Hell, even the Dreamcast was an online system. But not a lot of people used those capabilities back then for online. A lot of that Xbox stuff was for, Xbox Live got big, but that wasn't until like more or less like Halo 2. And before that, it was just like, what is it called? The system linking. That people used.
It was a year.
So more people used it for that option, and the PlayStation 2 was. I mean, I had a PlayStation 2. I even had the network adapter thing that you had to screw into the back of it. I remember that joint as well. But I played online like a handful of times. It was once this 360 got cooking, Halo 3 got cooking, freaking Call of Duty got cooking. That's when like I was going over friends' houses and seeing dads on the couch playing with us. Then it was like, what is happening?
It was like, because it was something where you're pulling more people in, right? Like it was just, you're pulling your friends in to do it, and it was just a way. And that's what's, I mean, I think about like the industry too over the last couple decades, really since that whole Call of Duty and Xbox Live revolution kind of like changed things. And back, like I said, when I was younger, it felt like it was for kids. Now, here I am. I'll be 47 this year. I manage a team, at a major corporation. It's like, I don't care. You guys know I'm gaming, and I'll talk about, somebody in my team says, hey, I'm going to take the day off when this thing launches. Like, man, you deserved it. Go take that off and go play whatever, get yourself whatever that is. And,
you're playing Starfield. Like, go take 2 days off.
It's like, it's a different, it's so funny because, I think back to when my parents, when I was younger, and my parents, I mean, they're just sitting around watching the news in 60 Minutes every day, and like the closest my dad ever got to that stuff was like sports. But, I think it's had a lot to do, the where gaming has gone. It has a lot to do with people kind of being okay with, not saying you got to
letting their hair down.
Yeah, like, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that Marvel's big now. Like, people are cool with going to Comic-Con and, watching comic book movies, things like that. And that was stuff that also wasn't very cool back then. To be a Spider-Man fan, back when you were, back in the day, few decades ago, if you're over 20, wasn't really cool. Now it's cool, right? And so yeah, all this stuff it's changed a lot, and I'd say it's good. It's good that, not that everybody has to be a gamer, but it's good that people can be if they want to be, right? And that's the thing about it.
And I think one other last thing I want to leave off with is that the kids of yesterday are now the adults of today, and the adults of yesterday are now old, senile, wild people that don't know what they're talking about anymore, that need your help to set anything up. And now that they get bored, they want to figure out a way to connect with you. And so you buy them a console, and they just shrug their shoulders like, all right. I guess I'll give it a
Yeah.
try. Because I don't know how many old folks that I've heard of that weren't into gaming for all this time, and now that they, living on their own and whatnot. I mean, my mama's even talking about getting on to Xbox. I got family members I would have never thought would be into gaming that are sitting down and playing just because of the ability to reach and talk to other people.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing, man. It really is, and that's the coolest part of this. It's the coolest part of, honestly, it's the coolest part of gaming. It's like a reason why the Xbox kind of stayed as my primary is because of the friends. At the end of the day, that they were as much a part of the experience, if not more than anything, as the games. Honestly, it's the people, right, that you kind of stay in touch with and hang out with while you got this thing that you can celebrate together. So
all right, well, I've also got to ask, because I'm kind of curious. So you've been on many shows and stuff like that throughout the past. What are some of the most influential people to you out in gaming? Somebody that kind of gives you the energy to keep you creating content, or somebody that reached out or that you've reached out to ask questions. Like, who are some of those people that you just trust?
So being really candid about it, the one that stands out the most, and I even told them this. I was listening to ILP, and it took me back to, like I mentioned to you a couple times in the show, it took me back to me and my friends sitting there gaming, and these guys, they reminded me of me and my boys. And I told Cog, I was like, you guys kind of inspired me to thinking about, like, hey, maybe I could do something like that. They were like, they're about the same age, and felt like there was like some sort of connection, right? So and they were very entertaining, they're funny. So obviously, so I would say that's probably key. I always been listening to Rand and Jez since I think they probably were launched back in the day. So like those are some guys that I like a little bit of it. I like the diversity, right? Like not everybody doing the same thing, kind of bringing their own personalities to it, just being yourself, like that kind of thing. So yeah, I think those were probably the ones that stick out the most. And I've talked to those guys as well, and that always kind of is encouraging as well.
Yeah, I hear that. I'm actually there with you in that. One of the first people that I talked to before I actually started content creating was King David. Reached out to him and just asked him a few basic questions about content creating. And at the end of it all, after me just saying, I got a problem with this, and I don't know about that, and I don't have enough to buy this, and I need to have everything in order. And he is like, stop. Just do it. Just do it. You'll figure it out throughout it. Just stop thinking about it and just do it.
It's the hardest part, man. The hardest part of me, like when I talked about when losing weight, the hardest part of that was the first day I could put my shorts on and actually go stand in the gym out of shape around girls that could lift more than me, back at that time, some years back. So it's for anybody that, that listens and is like, oh, I'm kind of thinking about it. It's like, it really is. And the thing is, sometimes you do things and it's not the thing you're doing that ends up being it might lead to something else, right? It tells you, it gives you feedback, right? When you start thinking about doing something, and it becomes like a desire, like yeah, I would say just do it and then see where that takes you. Because sometimes you'll go, well, maybe it's not exactly this, but now that I started to do this, I see that I want to actually do this other thing. That's how it's worked at work. That's how it kind of sometimes works in this too, right? It's not always a direct path. And so if you start getting that feeling, then yeah, just jumping out there and And God, even if you got to listen to one of my podcasts and it sounds like you're talking through 2 tin cans with a string attached to it, like all over the place in terms of show structure and whatever, people talking over each other. It doesn't matter, man. You just start, you learn, like you start and you learn, right? And that's a fun part, is getting better. Sometimes it's not really where you're at either. It's just knowing that you're getting a little bit better. There's a high in that, right? There's something that kind of fuels you just to say that, hey, like, hey, today was a good day, like the like the song goes.
For sure. So, what is some words that you would give to somebody that is thinking about getting into content creation? Like, what is, let's say, 3 fair warnings?
So I'll give it from this standpoint, because I don't want to act like, obviously I don't look at myself as somebody who's arrived in this. This is something that I'm still like exploring, right?
Same.
But but you can equate it to a lot of other areas of life. And I just, I take it back to like when I said I was super duper out of shape and went to the gym, and it was like the hardest part was getting those shorts on and going, and then going again. And being willing, be willing to not be good, and be okay with that. And I think the way I would look at it is like, okay, I know that this is that, like whether it was like public speaking, whether it was going to a gym, whether it was getting on a podcast for the first time, it's like, I know this is probably not going to be my best, right? And that's okay. And someday I'm going to look back at this and I'm going to go, wow, like look at how far it came. And that is probably as cool as anything, is to find yourself growing. So, I think people just have to be okay with that. And I think for all of us that are still trying to figure it out, is be okay with feedback too, be open to that, and finding somebody that can be honest with you sometimes when you're ready for that. Sometimes you need to first build up that confidence, but when you're ready for that honest feedback, remember that it is just a process all the time. It don't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter if it's this or something else. Treat it like a process.
Fantastic. I like it. Very good answers, solid answers, and stuff I definitely say to somebody if they were thinking about getting into content creation. But what actually made you okay with hopping on a podcast like this, where we're talking about your background? You even said it earlier, like caught you about a year and a half earlier, and you would have been like, I ain't about it. But like, what was the allure for somebody like you to come on a show like this?
Like it wasn't just like one big step. It was just like a lot of little steps, man. And I think it was just continuing to be okay with being uncomfortable. Like the times when you feel uncomfortable, somebody invites you on to something, or somebody pushes you a little bit, or somebody says, hey, why don't you grab a camera and try to jump on that way? Just taking like little steps like that, that's all it is, man. It's just continuing. Like I said, it don't matter if it's here or if it's at work. It's being willing to keep being uncomfortable and keep taking steps. That's it. And now it's not a big deal. I guess I have the perspective that it's not. It's like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Somebody's going to see me and go, like, who cares? At the end of the day, like, be you, man. Like, you spent too many years are wasted with a lot of people worrying about how they look and what people think in the moment. It's like, once you get over that, life is better.
Absolutely.
And I think I've hit that age, man. I hit that age. It's like, you know what? Dad bod, whatever. It's fine. You just gotta be okay with that stuff.
Okay, and then last but not least, why, or should I even say Halo anymore? Like, is Halo gonna be your main topic of conversation when diving further into content creation? Because I know that's your like main game as of right now.
It's one of the things we do. I mean, part of what I love about gaming is the diversity. So obviously there's going to be more to it than just Halo. It is just one of the avenues. It's one of the avenues we could think of for to grab the "You Had Me at Halo" name. but also, just a chance to kind of get out there and start talking about something I knew about. But yeah, no, the future is going to have more variety in it. I think until something comes along that proves otherwise, nothing's been like it for over 2 decades. I expect it's going to continuously be one of those pillars for me. But it's just going to continue to be one of them, not all of it. And obviously we'll continue to expand from there.
Gotcha. And I'm gonna squeeze one more question in there.
Sure.
And this has to do with Halo as well.
Okay.
I want to know what you want out of Halo, not what you anticipate, not what the fans want. I want you to hush everything else out in your head. And you specifically tell me what you want with Halo and the direction you think it's going to go.
Oh, that's an interesting question. I want it to just, I want it to basically be its best self. But I also want to see, the people that work on that stuff be able to move forward with it without, as the backlash they get with every little step they're going to take, right, creatively and things like that. So, I'm not looking for it to be the biggest thing, the Fortnite or whatever. I mean, it had its moment in terms of that. I think that it's okay for that to not come back to that level. But again, I want it to be able to, like, where its identity is, to really nail that. And I'll take it a step further, though. I do want to see it innovate again, in some way. Like, I think there's still a way that it can do that while keeping its identity. It was the game that, innovated when it came to community with matchmaking in Halo 2. It was the game that innovated in creation with Forge and Halo 3. And, obviously the first one, did a lot to inspire the industry. So I'd like to see it find some way to set a bar and not just chase trends, but figure out how to maintain its identity, or maybe just keep something on the side there, but also figure out how to do something innovative in that space. And it does have a very diverse sandbox, a lot of diverse elements to it. I think there is a lot of opportunity to play around with it. I think they're sometimes afraid to do too much because the community backlashes every little thing they try. But, like, even as the big team mode and stuff like that, just chasing BR, I understand they have to do that. But I hope that over the next few years, underneath this, underneath the leadership, and I'm not necessarily throwing anybody previously under the bus either. I feel like they were kind of answering to a lot of data and analytics, and a lot of what the industry is driving, and they were, a lot of their decisions were made under the old regime, before Microsoft started giving a lot of the freedom to these studios. But now that there's a lot of studios, they don't need to be everything. They can take some chances, and I'd like to see them do something and maybe create their own subgenre, again, somehow. Beyond it, still keep the arena stuff. That's what I play a lot, but see if they could do something innovative. It's something innovative with community or technology, with cloud, do something that nobody else is doing, that kind of really takes advantage of the diversity in sandbox.
Do you think they should continue on with what I call slippery space? or should they move on to another engine, in your opinion?
I'm going to leave it up to devs. I actually tried talking to Don about it, because he's an Unreal developer. But I also talked to some people that worked on Halo previously, and that's probably, I could go on for a little while, so I won't, because you'll lose people.
Whatever.
Listening to engine stuff, but you
can speak your mind. I'm sure those that are game centric want to hear what you got to say. So I don't want to stifle you, but I do want to give you the opportunity to say what you feel.
Yeah, so talking to developers that have worked on the project, I think that the engine they have is what is meant to optimize the sandbox and what that game is supposed to do best. From what I understand, I like even things like the Forge that's really cool coming out. May not exist in Unreal. I mean, it's not. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it probably would exist in some other form. So from what I understand, that's probably the best case scenario. The challenge they have with that is that people come in don't know how to use it. It's cumbersome to learn. So I would say that there's a way to kind of resolve all of that. I think what I taking all this feedback, and Don ain't gonna like this answer because he told me why they should go to Unreal. But I would say that just kind of hearing from some of the former developers saying what it did well, I think they should stick with it. But there's two things that need to happen if they do. Obviously, they need to make the tools better for their developers, make it easier to learn. And then I think they need to be able to keep people longer. That's one of the challenges they've had is that when you're rotating people in there and you're bringing in contractors,
You got a revolving door over there. Yeah.
Yeah, something on like but then the other solution is they could use both. They could have one. They could have one. Maybe if they're going to do a spin-off, it's an RPG like type of campaign, or it's more of a narrative-driven type of thing. Then Unreal might be the right answer to go with better-looking visuals. But at the expense of, from what I understand, the Slip Space does make that wide sandbox with all those physics. It makes that run really well. So that's that. Again, talking to some former developers, that's why they've stuck with it, and that's why they, even after testing things, they keep going back to it. But we'll see if they can. If Unreal is the answer, then if the developers think that's going to help them do it better, then at the end of the day, whatever the developers say, I think that's what they should go with.
I want them, and this is random. This is just a totally different game. I would like to see them, like, whether they stay with Slip Space or Unreal. I'd probably rather it go Unreal since we're going into new territory with this thought process. But I want to see a Halo ODST type of game.
I'm down with that.
Ran like an RPG off of Mass Effect.
You're kind of hitting a lot of the hot buttons. I hope this is the other thing. They can keep what they have as a base for the base, right? For the old school 20 years of playing Halo. The Halo Infinite that they have fits that lane probably as well as anything since 3. But I think now that they have that, they can just keep supporting that, and they can spin off other things, take some chances. So, I talked about innovation. I guess I keep rethinking my answer. You know what? Just, try some different things. ODST was a cool little experience. You can build a Metroid Prime. You could do like a Metroid Prime version of Halo, right? You could do a Mass Effect version of Halo. You can even do smaller, content, put out, smaller experimental content with it. So the reason why I think that makes sense in that particular IP that might not make as much sense like with some other franchises is because it is such a vast universe, like lore wise. It is one of the few, I'd say one of the few, I won't say the only, but one of the few IPs in gaming that has a vast enough, enough lore that's got a big enough world that you could that it's like Star Wars in a way, that you could spin off all different types of genres, characters, parts of the stories. You can do completely separate stories within the universe. So I think it gives them a lot of creative freedom. And then the sandbox itself, because of the different aliens and different weapons and things you use, I think would work well in an RPG. It would work well in a tactics game. It would work well in in a Metroidvania. It worked well in a lot of different genres. And so I think that I would like to see them spin off some other, pieces of content. And Staten did say recently that ODST was one of his most fondest projects that he worked on. And Pierre, the guy who just took over the game part of it, did say that they want to branch out and do some other things, some other types of games within the universe. So I think that your wish might be a realistic possibility. Just guessing, just reading into words maybe that I shouldn't be, but
I really hope that is true, because that would be insane to have like the type of physics that they have in Halo, but have it be written like a Mass Effect, to where you're like using these different characters. Because I mean, even in Halo 2, you use a lot of you use a lot of like the enemy, and you and him figured a ton of stuff out together to work towards the same goal. So it'd be kind of cool to have that kind of style in like the form of a Mass Effect, to where you're like recruiting people onto your squad, and it can be it could be like somebody from like the Flood, and somebody from like from the Banished, and like you just have like a ragtag, like we're saving the world kind of group with this
XCOM.
weird ODST guy.
XCOM meets Halo. I don't know, something in there. There's probably something you could do there. Yeah, a lot of opportunities, man. I'm all about them, and I know like Yobi just mentioned something.
Yeah.
Unlocked. There's a lot of different characters that they have that they just kind of left by the wayside. They can go back to and just build them a spinoff, man. Maybe Locke is, maybe you use him for the more Titanfall-esque, like that sort of thing they were going for with Halo 5 a little bit. Take that even a step further. Maybe you do the wall running, and I don't know. You could just go do that stuff, and then if it's not mainline, you can't really offend people too much, right? So
right. Yep. Because I did like some of that extra stuff that you could do in 5. I thought that was really cool. The only thing that got the thing that really missed it for me on that game, which I'm not going to dive into that super deep, because I feel like that's always but an issue, but it was just going versus the same boss over and over. I didn't like that.
Yeah, agree.
That was one of the things that really kind of killed it for me. But I mean, the mechanics in that game was fantastic. I liked it.
There was some good stuff, but story and the Warden sucked.
Yeah, the Warden really sucked.
We'll pivot past that, because we could do another hour show on just that game.
Absolutely. Let's go on ahead and get into some of the questions I like to ask all of my guests. So the first one I'm going to start with is, what genre of gaming do you not really like that much? Like, and I'm going to post this to you the way that I post this to everybody, this question. I want you to think about it as if you're walking into the store and they have games by genre. What's the last genre that you're going to walk to before you walk out of the store?
Walking sims. That's easy.
Walking sims? Give me give me a title that you just like think is pointless.
Anything that doesn't have, I mean, the thing is, none of them are standing out. I did play the God, what was it? It was a really, really popular one. It was on Game Pass. I forced myself through it. Good story, but I still feel like you need to have some interactivity, some sort of gameplay loop, something that makes me come back and have to like learn something or do some challenge it. If I'm just going through the motions, I'll just go watch a TV show or movie, So, but the genre I'm talking about, right? Like you just walk around, you click on a thing, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's probably my least favorite genre.
Like some would say like Death Stranding. Even some would say Plague Tale is even a walking sim in their eyes.
No, but Plague Tale has stealth, and if Plague Tale.
I'm just giving you examples of what people call walking simulators. So maybe you can narrow it down a little bit more.
I guess it was like, God, I can't remember like the names of them right now off the top of my head. Somebody else would have to help me out. But the ones where you just you literally like click on things and that's it. You're not really playing a game. You're just kind of walking through it and
So like, what's that like the guitar game that Damn, because that's kind of like a walking sim, but platformer-ish game. I can't remember that guy with the guitar. That game. I even made a video on it. I just can't.
I did play that. That was okay. That was okay artistically, at least there was something.
The Artful
there.
Escape. Thank you. You said
Artful
artistic.
Escape.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't play Death Stranding. It does look like a walking sim, which is why I didn't play it. I don't know if it is as much that as
It can be. It has. I mean, its main thing is to walk from place to place until you get a vehicle.
So like I'm reading some here, like everybody's gone to the Raptors one. Firewatch is a popular one. What Remains of Edith Finch? Like that's like the top rated one of all time. I did beat that, and that was I really respect and appreciate it from an artistic standpoint. It was
it's an insane game.
Yeah, it was a really well done story, but the genre it's in is not my genre, I guess is what I'm saying. So within that genre, it's probably that's the only one I've ever beat. So I guess I'll give it credit for that. But just again, I just watch a movie at that point. I mean, there's some elements to it at that point that you don't get in movies, the experience. But I don't know. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna go with.
So walking sims is that. All right.
Yeah.
So tell me the best 3 games that you've played in the last year. And they don't have to have come out in the last year, but just the best 3 games that you've played that you can remember.
Oh, so they don't have to. So if it's not what's come out, then that makes it a lot easier, because this year has been a backlog year for me mostly, aside from Elden Ring, which is the game of the year. I think is going to stay game of the year.
You think God of War is going to be in the rear view, huh?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to God of War, but that looks like an iterative, game from what I played. Elden Ring was something special, so I'm going to go with Elden Ring. Plus, From Software games are just in general, aside from Halo, they're top 3 for me. So Elden Ring, I did play Yakuza 0 for the first time. I beat Like a Dragon last year. Or maybe it was the year before that, but played 0 this year. That was excellent. And I'm playing Plague Tale right now, so I'm going to cheat. It's a game I'm not finished, but I liked the first one a lot, and this one seems to be everything that I was hoping for. So I'm going to go and assume that it's going to stay in my top 3 when this is over.
Oh, it's a fantastic game so far. It's very visually pleasing, and it puts you in uncomfortable situations. That's for sure.
Yeah, man. You almost feel like you can smell the game, through the TV when you see some of this stuff. So,
there's really that, and it seems like the enemies are a lot more privy to where you're at and stuff like that in this version compared to the last version where it felt like they got lost fairly quickly. Yeah. I find myself running for quite some time before I lose somebody in this one. They sense where you're at a lot easier, and they made the combat a lot better. So like you can actually get hit and get back up and continue to run or strike back. You can stab in this one, which you couldn't do in the last one.
Yeah, it's very good. So far, I'm only three. Am I in chapter 3 or 4? I think I'm on the 3rd chapter right now, and it's so far it's taken everything from the first one that was one of my sleepers of last generation, and it looks like it's not like a huge evolution, but the tweaks are just right. Like even the progression makes me think about how I'm progressing. So we talked about the gameplay aspect, like it's a little bit more gamey, I guess. Like there's more gameplay to it because you're thinking about whether you want to upgrade, your sling, or you want to upgrade your stealth skills. And so I like that aspect of it.
Yeah. Amicia is a savage this time compared to the last run around. She is battle tested. She's ready to go. All right. So those were the 3 games that you played in the last year that you really enjoyed. Now I want you to list me either one or a few games that, and this is throughout your entire history of gaming, because I want you to have some room to think about this. I want you to tell me a couple games, if possible, that you played and was extremely disappointed by?
Oh boy. God, I feel like one that stands out a lot, and it's only because back then we were broke, like I said, on the NES. I think it was it Dragon Quest or something like that. It was one of those, Dragon Warrior. It was and it was so hyped up because, you know, coming from Japan, it was really big there. But I just remember you get the little picture of a blob and it just blinked when you hit it. That bummed me out. that was disappointing. You know, there was probably a few in there that the arcade to console port never really should have happened. I guess it shouldn't have presented itself like the game that we saw at the arcade. You know, this is gonna sound funny, considering we talked a lot about Halo, but Halo 2's campaign at the time really pissed me off.
Oh snap! That's a hot take.
Yeah, this is a hot take, especially since it holds up a lot better in hindsight. But I remember at the time because it was the most hyped game in my. A lot of it's expectations, right? When you talk about disappointment, it doesn't mean it's a bad game. It's based on expectations.
Right.
I don't think my expectations for a game have ever met or been higher than they were for Halo 2 at the time. And when we never got the level from E3 and then it ended on the cliffhanger, I was like, this is awful. I was like so pissed off. I couldn't believe they did that. And
I would have never thought I heard Halo 2.
I know.
It was a disappointing game.
The other thing I hated at launch is you start off with that one SMG and the balancing with that. Eventually they gave you more options, but that sucked. So I was, as much as I played that a lot with friends and it's my favorite IP of all time, it's also my biggest disappointment of a game because of the expectations I had. So yeah, there's a hot take for you.
That was steaming hot. I don't think I'll probably ever get another Halo 2 take. Probably. It's
still a really, really good game. So I just putting that out there. Just again, I was expecting like way up here, and it was like more like there. I don't know.
Well, I'm right. I'm right there with you on whether you want to call it a horrible or a sacrilegious or whatever kind of takes, because I to this day cannot stand the original or the Final Fantasy VII for the original PlayStation. Hate it.
Really? Okay, that was up there for me.
Oh man, I hate that game.
I get like we could probably sit here all day, and if I start thinking about it, I'll come up with a bunch more of them that I really didn't like, or I was just like shrugged my shoulders. I remember my brother was so hyped about me trying GoldenEye. I'm like, compared to what I was playing on the PC at the time, I was like, what's this? Okay, fine. I was like, okay, we done. It's like, I was not into GoldenEye.
We better move on. You're getting hot. You are getting hot. We better go. Go.
Like I said, I'm my own person. Not all my takes are mine.
Yeah, they sure are.
I only picked a couple of the most classic games of all time. But anyways,
just a couple. All right, so now I want you to go to your favorite studio. I want you to tell me your favorite studio of all time and what game best represents that studio.
Of all time, it probably was the classic Bungie. Despite Halo 2 being a little bit of a disappointment, classic Bungie was what brought me back into gaming full force with the original trilogy, Halo CE and 3 specifically. Although I would say maybe close now, and mostly because it's more recency bias, would be From Software. They're right now, I consider the GOATs right now of the industry for me, just because a lot of people try to imitate them, but nobody seems to be, even they can't imitate a game without Miyazaki leading it. So I think any project led by Miyazaki at From Software is in a class of its own today.
He is the new Kojima.
I mean, he's better than Kojima ever was.
Oh man, I thought we were done with the hot takes. Oh my god.
Kojima's like the caddy for Miyazaki. Miyazaki redefined like
Oh
he's
my
he's re-
goodness, the
created a
slander.
genre. Created a genre. Kojima's interesting. He's like if you had a bunch of weird dreams and you were able to make expensive video games about them, but teach their own.
Oh man, you are driving the bus. You are
cool.
really driving that bus.
Hey, if you're gonna go off a cliff, you might as well see how much air you can get, right?
All right. One of the last few questions I have for you before we get out of here is I want you to grab 2 IPs that are dead in the past and bring them to today. What 2 IPs are you grabbing and giving them that AAA treatment?
Oh man. Okay. Well, this is actually not that difficult because it would have been a toss up between 3, but NCAA is coming back. So NCAA football is like already coming back. So I'm happy.
Let's
about
go.
that.
I'm happy to hear that you're a fan.
Yeah. Hopefully they don't mess that one up. But the other 2 big ones, and I think the first one's unrealistic. Project Gotham Racing is still my favorite racing game of all time. It's the one that got me into racing games. And I get Forza Horizon has some of its DNA, but it's not Project Gotham. It's not like Project Gotham was like the Dark Souls of racing games. It was intense. You forced you to really kind of like learn all the nuances of it to get good at it. And there's nothing and it did it without being a dry sim. It did it with flair, and nothing else combines skill and flair the way that did in that genre. So miss that franchise. I don't think they're going to ever bring it back just because they got I mean, they sell 20 million Forza Horizons. They probably wouldn't sell 2 million Project Gothams. So
It'd be tough.
the other one I think would be probably Mech Assault, something in that universe.
Okay. FromSoft again.
No, Mech Assault, which was
wait, yeah, my bad.
That was the OG Xbox man.
What am I thinking of?
Chrome Hounds is what you're thinking of. No, not Chrome.
Who made Armored Core?
Armored Core, that's the one. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was thinking. Yeah, that's Armored Core that I'm thinking of. I always get Mech Assault. Even when I was a kid, I used to always get those 2 mixed up. I don't know why. I really don't.
Yeah, I mean, and Mech Assault, I think that one's a realistic one if they can figure out the IP aspects of it, because I hear that's what's holding that up. But these days, I could imagine you could have it would fit into today's free-to-play gaming with all the different things you could do with mechs, right? Like in terms of cosmetics, you could get crazy there. Bring in, the Crackdown cloud destruction that never happened because nobody played that game and it never worked the way it was. Try that again, but do it in Mech Assault now. Bring
man,
buildings toppling and
then have a Godzilla DLC.
Something, man. Yeah, like Project Gotham, Mech Assault. I'd be very happy. I wouldn't really ask for anything else if you can give me those 2.
Okay. Now I want to know what frustrates you about gaming as a whole. So this could be any sub piece of gaming. Like what do you see in gaming that just kind of ticks you off a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, not much about the industry itself, despite the stuff that's out there that I don't care for. Like, I do miss some of I understand free to play. I preferred the old school, less nickel and diming kind of gaming and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you can ignore that stuff. There's so many choices, right? That you can ignore stuff you don't like. You don't have to buy everything. You can still, just focus on supporting devs that still make stuff that you like. So there's more devs than ever before. So my complaints are less about the industry, and ironically, as much as the community is the number one thing, aspects of it or segments of it, the where people take things personal. I think that's kind of sometimes it's a little bit draining. It's it's also kind of embarrassing to be part of that stuff. It's like, find out your preferences. It's fun to clown Jim Ryan, but at the end of the day, none of that stuff should be personal. It should be just, like, I don't care what somebody prefers, and I think that's really that's just something that kind of goes greater in society. It does feel like politics at times with the way people act with that stuff, and I prefer it not to be. I just, again, like, the best part about this industry and that I've seen over the years is that it can bring everybody together. So when I see anything that kind of contradicts that, that's probably the thing that stands out that I dislike the most.
Okay. I've heard that on several other episodes. People would say that, the community just drives me insane.
Probably an easy one. And it's not that, because I think there's more good about it. You focus, it's easy to focus on the crap. There's more people that are normal and just have fun and don't care what where you like to play and what your favorite thing is, and they're just they're all cool with it. That are like that. But I think the ones that do stand out really do stand out, and they somehow get a lot. They're allowed to make a lot of noise, and
and they do.
Maybe. Yeah, and then and then we're like, get so incensed by what people say that we got to retweet the people that annoy us the most. So yeah, I mean, that aspect of it is the easy one to call out.
All right, I'm gonna give you a aspect of gaming that you might not like, and I want you to give me your take on it.
Okay.
So, next gen consoles, period. 30 FPS, period.
I mean, it's I want the option. I don't get as worked up as everybody. I get surprised more than worked up, I guess. I guess I would trust the developers to prioritize what they think is best. If I disagree with them, I'm just not going to buy it. There's so many things that I won't ever have. There's so many things that look good that I'm never going to have time for. I'm just not going to worry about the handful that don't meet my standards or aren't prioritizing what I want. But I will take gameplay over ray tracing any day of the week. So, give me the frames. But if they don't, I'm not going to lose my mind unless Halo goes to 30 frames. Then I will lose my mind, and I'll be running a 10-hour podcast about that day, which won't ever happen.
And then to give that to give this piece just one more layer, I want to also ask, do you think that the new norm is games coming out underdone? Because we've seen it.
Yeah.
I'm not just gonna say Halo. I'm not just gonna say, I'm not just gonna say these games that are obvious that came out underdone. There's plenty of games. I mean, you could even say like what was that game called? Dying Light 2. It came out underdone, especially on Series S. Super underdone.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think it is kind of the norm today. And I think the reason why it is the norm today is because within AAA, it's the norm today. I should reframe that. And the reason is the gaming has got a lot more complex. There's a lot more teams. There's a lot more teams that don't even work out of the same building that are working on the same project in AAA gaming. There's just a lot more moving parts today. And then you factor in the pandemic and the fact that everybody had to go work from home. That throws a lot of issues into that. So it makes sense why that's happening today. I think in time, it's going to get a lot better again because they will adapt to the complexities. They will adapt to being remote. There's going to be different technologies that will help them QA test these games. And that's something that nobody really, that I don't see, I say nobody, I hate saying absolutes, but most people I don't hear really talking about that. A lot of the technology that's coming out is going to allow teams to get smaller again and be able to produce high, high fidelity, high, production values and things like that. And I think that also it's going to help them, start bug testing things where you don't need to have like hundreds of people, playing it. Right now the problem is like you need to almost throw it out there into the public and have thousands or millions of people give you feedback, and then you go, oh, okay, now we found it. Where you can't, 100 people testing a thing isn't going to be able to discover every little nook and cranny, because again, there's more variables today than ever before. The ones that come out polished usually don't have as many variables. Like I think Plague Tale, besides the frame rate, doesn't have a lot of technical issues, but it's and as much as I love that what I've played so far, it's a much less complicated game design, right? A lot less, you don't got all these physics, you don't got this wide open world, a lot of different things that can happen. So I think I think it'll get better. I think the tools allow these teams to get a little bit smaller, to start offloading some of the testing. So yeah, it's the standard today, but I don't think it will be maybe 5 years from now. I think we'll get back to polished things. We'll kind of work our way back towards polished games. Okay.
All right. I mean, I got a million more questions I could ask, but we need to get up out of here. The last of the two questions I'm going to ask, one of them being what a dream come true within gaming would be for you.
Let's stick with the theme. I said community's kind of been the biggest part of it. The one thing that does still suck is that if you got buddies and I talk to him like Mr. Badbit or something, he comes on the Xbox, but it'd be cool once we when we get we can get it to where everybody on any system is easily, I'm not just saying crossplay, but where we're all just kind of part of the same, we can, whether it's through Discord or whatever, where we're all kind of together and it doesn't really matter. You don't even care where your friends go because you're going to hang out with them regardless what platform you're going to be on. If I'm going to be on God of War, I can still talk to my buddies my Halo buddies, right? I think that's kind of where I want to see the industry get to, more than any one specific game, is to start to kind of bridge those gaps. And I think that will also eliminate some of the tribalism, because I think some of that is influenced by people wanting everybody to be where they're at, right? Because there is actually a benefit to that, where if we remove that being a benefit, then suddenly that tribalism has less, there's really less reason for it. There's really less reason to care where your buddies go game and stuff like that.
It doesn't matter if you pulled up in a Datsun or a Ford, we're still pulling up at the same place.
Let's just all get on there. It don't matter. It doesn't matter if there's somebody.
I said Datsun like they're still around.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't even I drove a Plymouth Polari to high school in 1980. Never mind,
there you go.
Figure it out.
Classic.
It was a tin can. Hoopty rolling. But yeah, so that's my answer.
Gotcha. Yeah, my first ride was an 81 Buick LeSabre.
All right. So
yeah.
okay.
And one of my favorite cars to this day is the Datsun 280Z. So that's probably why I had the thought of
Datsun on the mind.
Yeah.
All right.
It's one of my favorite cars of all time. It just looks really cool. But anyways, last thing I ask everybody is if you have any questions for me. And I'll tell you, like the last 3 episodes, someone's asked me how I got into content creation. So if you do have any questions, ask me anything but that one, because I've answered that one for now like 3 weeks in a row.
Yeah, so I won't ask you that. Okay, well, all right, Mr. Ham Solo, where do you have any vision for where you hope to see all this content creation go?
Okay, so a vision as to where I'd like to see it go, man. Well, I would definitely like to just be a comfortable channel where people could come to like ask questions or meet people or learn about people. But with that being said, I'd like to use this channel to meet you know, people high up in the gaming industry.
Okay.
So like, and I still want it to feel like a hometown kind of show, kind of like what I got
Yeah,
going
I get
right
you,
now,
man.
to where it doesn't exactly have like the name of IGN on it or the name
Right.
of, I mean, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't mind working for some of those kind of things, but I'd like this one of the stipulations in my contract to be like, I can still do a podcast like this, right?
Yeah.
To where I can get one-on-one with people, because I like to talk to, you know, gamers that are just getting their content off of the ground. I like to talk to people that has had their, name put in for quite some time. Big content creators, small content creators, people that don't even do content creating, that are just obviously in love with gaming. I like talking to those folks at all. But I'd like to use what I've created so far to be able to talk to people like Phil, people like Sarah Bond, people like Tom Warren.
Yeah.
And I'd love to talk to some of the bigger heads and just kind of get him in here for just this kind of chatter. Just sit back, kick it, talk about some history, talk about what they see going on in the years of, these platforms, coming out, and what they want to see the direction of the industry go and stuff like that. Like one of my favorite people that, or not one of my favorite people, but one of the people that I'd absolutely love to have a conversation with is Corey Barlock. I'd love to see how he got into, God of War, and, what it was like in his household. Cause I know he has a wife that's very into social media as well, and how he balances that, and how he balances being a gamer and a developer, and what kind of irritates him about, knowing what's behind the scene and then having to sit there and play it. One of the cool people that I did talk to not that long ago, I had on this podcast, which it was extremely insightful, and that's why I want to talk to more people like him, was Jerry Hook. Which he was like the lead designer of Halo Infinite and on the design team for.
So what did he spill? What dirt did he give you?
Well, I mean, you can go check out the episode, but he also, but he told me a lot about like his thoughts on like remakes and remasters, and how pricing should probably work, and what it's like being with larger companies compared to what he's doing now with Jara Sparks with a small team. His company is pretty much provided by NetEase, and they're making console games. So he wanted to let me know that right from the jump, because I hear NetEase and I was thinking mobile, right?
Yeah.
So he like put my mind at ease and was like, no, we're making a console game, and we want it to be like kind of an adventure, but like wild game. And right now he's telling me that, or one of the last things he told me was that he in his team went out and bought like a ton of classic games, and they're playing through all different sorts of classic games to figure out how they want to implement a new game.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. And there is a lot you can learn from classic game design, right? Before you had all the bells and whistles, everything had to be. That's why I really like the Ori series. It felt like they really brought some of that stuff back. I didn't mention that one, but yeah, like stuff like that it's really interesting. But I will say on that note, you do have a good radio voice, not just a face for radio, but a voice for radio.
Thank you, sir.
I'm just kidding, but the other part. But you do definitely have a good voice for that, and I think you do a really good job with the interviews, man. So keep it up. I definitely see potential for you to do that, and I think you could do interviews for IGN or something like that. So
I
keep
mean,
it up, man.
I mean, like I said, I'd really love to do that, but I also want to stay to my roots at the same time.
Yeah,
and
I get you,
not
man.
be.
I get you.
I don't want to be too corporate-y or anything like
Yeah.
that. And like
That's
like
the
like
tough
like
part,
like no
right?
shade. Yeah, no shade to like IGN or G4, RIP to G4. But but like to those guys and like the content they make, sometimes it feels a little too like written, I guess, or
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
or like the or like it doesn't
No,
feel
I know what
like
you're
they're
saying.
being who they are. It feels like a character.
Authentic, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the
I get what you're saying.
authenticity. Thank you.
And that's a tough part too. Like like doing video content, writing it out first, and then reading it. Sometimes it gets a little. That's where I listen to myself. I'm like, I sound like I gotta get that. Gotta somehow keep balance that a little bit because you want to have it prepared and structured. So maybe you're like keeping it in bullets instead. So I'm talking instead of reading it, kind of thing. But I think that's part of it too. Is trying to keep that authenticity in here, and I think that's what does attract people to a lot of these things over.
That's what attracted Jerry to this show, is that he said he watched a couple episodes and he's like, you don't seem like somebody that just is just asking the questions for the audience. He seems like he's like, you seem like you're genuinely curious and you want to, and like you're authentic.
You do.
So
I think
like
you do a really good job with that, man. So definitely, this is the first time I've been here, but this is really cool, and I think you do a really good job, man.
Well, I appreciate that. The last thing I'm going to ask you to do before I have you let everybody know one last time where they can find you and whatnot is I want you, for me, to describe gaming in just 3 words.
All right. Well, we're gonna definitely start off with community because that's what we talked a lot. Number 2, I'd say discovery, and number 3, let's go with art.
Art?
Yep.
Okay, art. Fantastic. Oh man, Mr. Shivery in the chat, thank you so much. He said Ham is the best. He runs a great show. He was actually on my show I want to say a couple months ago now. Fantastic dude, Mr. Shivery. He's a huge Halo fan.
Yeah, I follow him. I follow him on Twitter. He seems like a really nice guy.
He is a really
positive guy. He's a positive, fair guy out in the community. Definitely appreciate what he brings. So
he is a very positive guy. I'll give him that. And he's different in the sense of me as to where I'm willing to listen to like console bull crap all the time, to where he has none of it. Mr. Chivalry does not play in the sandbox with those kids.
that's probably good. That's probably going to keep you mentally healthy much longer, better. Yeah, that's a better way to be. But yeah, as we talked about, that's probably the low part of otherwise a lot of great things within this community.
Well, good guys. Same with Dragonheart, Too Big, 108 Dragon, Lemon, Matt Likes Games. Everybody that showed up, I really appreciate y'all for doing so. You guys took time out of your day to come kick it with me and listen to one bad mother spit his facts about life. If you could, one last time for me, brother, go on ahead and let everybody know where they can find you, or yeah, you already know the run. Do what you gotta do.
Yeah. All right. Well, find me on
beans.
Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at my handle is at mutha_1 MUTHA_ONE. Don't ask me about the name. Other than that, you can find me at Xbox Era. I'm a senior editor over there. Like I said, I'll be putting out more content more frequently soon-ish. But we're also working on some things for Forge coming out. I don't know if I should say that, but we're working on some cool things coming out here for some of the upcoming seasons of Halo. So if anybody wants to jump in and be part of the community, you just want to play for fun, you're not super competitive, you just want to kind of get out there and try some different things, some fun things. We're going to be putting together a lot of we're going to try to bring people together in that regards and help people find the incredible content that is being created through what's going to be the Forge that's going to be released next month. Also, like I mentioned earlier, I do have a Halo podcast. It is generally bi-weekly. Sometimes it's every 3 weeks, depending on whether the news. Sometimes it's weekly, sometimes it's every 3 weeks, but it generally averages out to bi-weekly. And a lot of it just tries to coincide with some of the breaking news and things like that. So you can find me there on Thursdays, generally around 7 Eastern time. Every other week. And other than that, man, it was a pleasure being on here. Thanks for thinking of me, Mr. Ham Solo, and hopefully we'll talk again really, really soon. But I really enjoyed the conversations. You asked some good questions. It was a fun trip down nostalgia lane, and really good kind of taking us all the way back to blowing in our cartridges, right, and building our Voltron with the Sega Genesis /32X /Sega CD with the 4-player add-on.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, the Tower of Power over here. Anyways,
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for coming on One Bad Mother. It was a pleasure. This coming Thursday, I'm supposed to be having Zachary Ryan try to come back on here. We were supposed to have him on, I want to say about a month and a half ago, but he had to reschedule due to TwitchCon. Hopefully he can make it this time. I don't exactly have it 100% locked, so stay tuned, and I'll let you guys know probably more or less day of, because he's a slippery brother. But I will be back, if not Thursday, on Friday for Bullsitting with Loke and Cozy Beluga. We'll be definitely chatting it up about the games that has dropped in the last week and talking about the games that are going to be coming out here soon. So thank you everybody for coming out, checking out the Behind Them Sticks show on the TSWS Gaming channel on YouTube. Thank you everybody, and like I always say at the end of every show, keep it gaming or keep it moving. Peace out, y'all.
Take it easy.
Welcome to the Behind Them
Cat's
Sticks
back on the
podcast,
computer.
brought to you by TSWS Gaming.
Come and talk to me, Lennard Ray. Come on.